Hey guys, Sean here. Welcome to the F1 Word and to the debrief for the 2024 Australian Grand Prix. How many of you, truthfully, let me know in the comments later on in the chat now, had a Ferrari 1-2 on your bingo card for that weekend? Because I don't think anybody did, really. We all thought Max Verstappen was going to disappear with that, particularly after Saturday in qualifying, but nope. We got a Ferrari 1-2 for all sorts of reasons. Lots to get into, which I'm really looking forward to tonight. Really, really great. And a nice birthday present as well, Ferrari 1-2. So, you know, I'm a bit of a Max Verstappen fan, but as a team, I'm all about Ferrari. So, you know, mixed feelings about yesterday's race, but certainly very nice to see Ferrari on the top step of the podium now with Carlos Sainz. And what a story as well. We'll get into that in just a moment. Don't forget as well, running a poll, as we always do, rate the 2024 Australian Grand Prix. 79 votes so far. Great, good, average, okay, or bad are your four options. I'm going okay again. I know, boring, but I'm going okay with aspects of good. A lot of people I've seen on social media talk about how great that race was. I think if that's great, then our standards as a fan base has really slipped because that wasn't a great race. Sainz never looked under any threat. Again, we'll get into it properly. Ferrari were pretty comfortable. McLaren were pretty comfortable as the second fastest team. It wasn't a thriller, but it was a decent race. It was okay, bordering on good in areas, but still lots of talking points as always from the first two races. So there you go. Very excited for this one. I think, like I say, plenty to get into. I've got Jonty with me shortly. Just wait for him to hop into the Discord. Stuart couldn't make it today. I forgot where he said he was going. He's doing something. He's away for the weekend. He apparently might be back for, I can't remember, might be back for Japan. If we continue with these, we'll see how we go. But yeah, it was my birthday yesterday. So we'll celebrate that today in the stream. So, you know, your millions of dollars, pop them all in PayPal or via Super Chat. And then we'll go from there, and I'll use that to buy some beer and things like that. That's a lot of beer, potentially. Anyway, that's a lot of waffle. That's a lot of intro. Nothing really new for this channel. Good evening, Jonty. I've described that as okay with bits of good. Would you agree with that race? How you doing, mate?
Yeah, hello everyone. This has been a while. I'd say that's fair. There were some nice battles. We had something different at the front, but overall it wasn't the most exciting.
Yeah, it was. It's this. I think the story more than anything, isn't it, with Carlos Sainz, which I think, and I think we all agree, is where we're going to have to start today with Carlos Sainz and. It's kind of, we did this with Alex Albon, I think. We talked about this a lot when he had his surgery after Italy and then went to Singapore and delivered a really good result. This is just on another level. I know the Ferrari's on another level, but it's bonkers to think that not long ago, Jonty, he's laid in hospital being, you know, sorry to get graphics, sliced open, having his appendix taken out, and then off he goes. And not just in the race, by the way. Really strong all weekend, pretty much from the get-go. I was so impressed, but I didn't expect... Partly because I expected Verstappen to win, but I didn't expect Carlos Sainz to be threatening for a victory after everything he's gone through. I mean, I know everyone's probably sick of the story by now, but it's nice to have a positive, dare I say, hero story or something like that. Probably exaggerating a bit, but just incredible drive from Sainz.
Yeah, it was an absolutely stunning drive. Yeah, he did well in qualifying, out-qualifying his teammate again. And then in the race, he just didn't put a foot wrong. How much that first overtake was a real one, we won't know due to the various brake issues the one brake issue that Verstappen had. But it still was nice and exciting to see, you know, a dramatic overtake for the lead.
I sort of put in my notes that I'm trying to be cautious with it a bit because you've made the point there that was that because Verstappen was struggling, but the pace was there all weekend. Ferrari were apparently going to be a threat in the race anyway, according to Sergio Perez, and we had it all after qualifying, people talking about them being a threat in the race. So I'd like to think there would have been a challenge there, and I'll get into it a bit later when we talk about Verstappen, but I actually think, controversially, his retirement was a bit detrimental to the race, but we'll do that later when we talk about him specifically. But yeah, it's a good point on the overtake, but it's nice to see a pass for the lead. Whoever you support as a driver, as a team, whatever, it's nice to see an overtake for the lead in Formula One at the moment, and it ends a 9-race winning streak for Verstappen, and the last person to end a winning streak from Verstappen was Carlos Sainz. It's kind of poetic. So I assume Verstappen wins the next 10, and then Sainz can win again in the 11th race after that one. But phenomenal all weekend. I'll give you my notes very, very quickly. I've already said I don't think he was really going to be touched. I know there were some moments in the race, certainly towards the end, his tyres were going off and some question marks about whether or not he might be struggling and might get caught. I don't think he ever looked under threat. I think that was all under control from Ferrari, because when Lando Norris did close in, they either pitted or picked up the pace. But it was 8.1 seconds clear of Norris before Norris stopped on lap 15. After the first stops, there were those team orders with Leclerc told to hold position. Even if that didn't happen, though, I still think Sainz had the pace to hold off an attack from Leclerc. Although I've not actually found anything yet, Jonty, you might know, or someone in chat might, to confirm how long the team order was in play. Was it just in that middle stint, or was it from that first pit stop to the end? Do we know?
Can't say that, though.
No, because that kind of, it sort of, it brings on to the next point about Charles Leclerc, doesn't it? And how much of that was team orders and how much of that was Carlos Sainz just had him this weekend. But I do think Sainz had it covered at the front is my read of that. But either way, 8.6 seconds clear of Leclerc by lap 34. And then, of course, Leclerc pitted and then his tyres started to drop off in the final few laps. And that gave us a bit of excitement. 1.2 seconds he lost to his teammate on lap 56. But I think maybe managing towards the end there, a bit of tension. And then, of course, we'll get onto it in a bit, the Russell crash, which kind of brought out the virtual safety car and ended any threat from behind. But dare I say faultless from Carlos Sainz? I'm trying to think if he made a mistake all weekend.
Yeah, I can't think of a mistake that he made. All of his runs in quali were good as far as I can remember. You know, he didn't have to do any extra ones because he'd made a mistake or burned up, flat spotted any tyres. And in the race, just kept it super clean and quick.
Newt says all new driver contracts will require the removal of any intact appendix. So I was laughing as I go through that, Newt. Yeah, no, that's fair. I just wonder because what's your take then, Jonty, on the team orders at Ferrari? I think my view, if I'm putting myself in Fred Vasseur's position, given the domination we're still expecting from Red Bull for the rest of this season, you've got to maximise the opportunities. There's no point having your drivers battling, losing time, potentially falling into the McLarens or colliding, is there? So I think I probably have made a similar call. Maybe not quite so early in the race, but...
Yeah. I think a lot of that was to do with just the strategies they were on. There was still some uncertainty on the tyre life because we saw some people pitting from starting on mediums. And who was it? Was it Stroll, possibly? Maybe someone else who started on mediums and pitted on lap 9.
Stroll did mediums to lap 8.
8, sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was a big, hang on, they're supposed to do a bit longer. So there might have been some uncertainty on how long all of the compounds were going to do. So if they just behave themselves and don't burn anything up. But overall, I think Vasseur's got his head screwed on. We know he's a sensible, smart guy. And with the current dominance of Red Bull, he needs to just focus on whichever car is faster. Doesn't matter if it's Leclerc or Sainz. Whoever is faster at that point, they need to get the preference. Yeah.
Does Ferrari, so I was dealing with something, but yeah, does Ferrari feel more under control to you with Vasseur at the helm? It certainly does to me. I feel like they're going somewhere, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it's only 3 races, but they seem composed.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, there might be some flustering in the garages that we haven't seen or on the pit wall, but from what we've been able to see, they definitely seem just composed, settled, none of the frantic stuff we've seen the last couple of years.
Yeah, and I think Leclerc as well, just on Charles, he had a good race, a solid race, but this is why I'm trying to work out how long those team orders were in play, because if they're in play from after that first pit stop or race, then that explains the deficit. If it wasn't, then Leclerc was a little bit schooled this weekend by Sainz, which was a little bit surprising because Leclerc, he goes well around Australia generally, doesn't he? So I was expecting him to be higher up, but I think a solid race either way you look at it. He was a strong second. I don't really think he was under threat from Norris behind. Every time Norris kind of came at him, he either pitted to put on some fresh tyres or found a bit of lap time, stuck in a good lap that just pulled out a few tenths and I think kind of shut that one down. But he did struggle in the race with graining on the first set of the hard tyres, and then that got better for the second set of hard tyres, so that was all good. But would have been nice to see a fight for the win, even if it is just between two Ferraris. I'm not sure I would have coped with that, to be honest. I think that would have really stressed me out quite badly yesterday. But I think Sainz, for about the fourth time already, I think would have still come out on top between the two Ferraris. Just seemed stronger over the weekend. So, are you surprised by Leclerc? I guess is my question. And his apparent, again, it's the team orders is a big question mark, isn't it? Is it a lack of speed? Is it that he was told not to push?
No, I honestly just think it's for being sensible. I really do. They need to really focus and come together as a team and maximize everything they can get, because it only takes 2 or 3 weekends like this for a team that's leading a championship to really give others a sniff. Even when they're super dominant. Imagine this happens to both. Imagine like this brake issue happens to both Red Bulls in like 2 more races. That's like, that's 100 points in the constructors.
It's a big deal, isn't it?
Well, no, about 75, something like that. That could make a massive difference.
And you have to remember as well, sort of back end of last year when they were sort of fighting with Mercedes for P2 in the constructors, and maybe you go back and look at last season as a whole and you see points dropped where they were dropped because of bad strategy or bad decision making. Maybe Vasseurs thinking, let's get like you're saying, Jonty, basically get the points on the table now, and then hopefully that'll give us a bit more of a cushion later in the season if we do make a mistake or something does go wrong with the car, or Mercedes suddenly turn up and start performing, which looks a long way off at the moment, to be honest. Sorry, Mercedes fans, but it does. It just makes sense to get the points on the board early because it gives you a bit of that cushion, doesn't it? Bit of a buffer.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you mentioned last year, the fight with Mercedes. Ferrari got a win and one more podium than Mercedes did and still finished 3 points down.
Yeah, no, that's what I was asking you. I was like, are you sure? But no, you're right. Yeah, no, you are right. It's just nice to be a Ferrari fan today. That's all I'm going to say on that one.
Imagine,
it's lovely.
You imagine they let them fight. One of them loses a bit of front wing, and that puts them 5th instead of 2nd, or even 4th instead of 2nd. Based on last year's, that would be enough difference between 2nd and 3rd place, which is however many millions.
It's true. Yeah, no, and that's the thing, isn't it? I know we as fans get very excited about the Drivers' Championship, and I say this all the time. It's the constructors that really matters to the team. I know Ferrari are a little bit different in that in the past they have prioritised the drivers, haven't they? Which I assume is why Crofty asked that ridiculous question mid-commentary to Martin Brundle. If you didn't catch it, I'll let you know, where he said, if you were Fred Vasseur, would you be swapping the drivers around in the knowledge that Charles Leclerc would be leading the championship if he won the race? And you think, oh, shut up, no. Not at this stage of the season anyway. No, let's see if Leclerc's in a title fight first. I suspect not. I still fully expect Max Verstappen to disappear and win number 4, but chill out, Crofty. It's one afternoon. I'm going to enjoy it, and it's lovely to see, and it was nice to see a battle. We'll get to Red Bull in a minute. Let's talk about McLaren, because they all feeding quite nice to each other, these top 3 today. So, really great drive from Lando Norris. I was going to call them a surprise package, but they weren't really a surprise package to me, because in the preview that I did on Thursday, I said I thought they'd be strong here because fast corners, that car's very good around quick corners, so they should do pretty well. Wasn't expecting a podium from Norris. I wanted one for Piastri, no offence, Lando, but I did want one for Piastri, but it didn't really come to that because of a mistake. We'll get to that in a second. But yeah, no, really good drive from Norris. P3, not too far off the Ferraris. I've already said I don't think he would have got them in the end. But, as you said, Jonty, if they're fighting, there's a mistake or a bit of damage, and that brings Norris right into the play for the win. So he was there, I suppose you could say, to capitalise on anything if it all went wrong at the front. So that's something. But, maybe he could have challenged. It just didn't feel like that to me. I wasn't at all nervous. I feel like they had him covered. Even at the end, even without a late VSC, yes, Sainz's tyres were going off, but I think there weren't really enough laps for him to do anything about that. Got to be said as well, though, I don't think McLaren were really under any threat, Jonty, from behind. I think they were comfortably the second best team today. In fact, if I just find I've got the timing screen, the final timing screen. The problem is it's all a bit skewed because they're all over the place because of the VSC, weren't they? So it's a bit difficult, but he was 20 seconds-ish clear of Perez come the end of the race. So I don't ever think McLaren looked like they were going to lose third and fourth at the minimum without some kind of catastrophic mistake. It's felt like the 90s. That's what I'm going to say. Ferrari and McLaren, top two teams locking out the top four places. Take me back.
Yeah, it did. It does have those memories of the late 80s, early 90s when, well, let's be honest, the only two teams were McLaren and Ferrari. Everyone else was just busy blowing up and crashing into each other. Like you said, solid drive from Lando. He takes the record, not the best record to have, but certainly not the worst, from Nick Heidfeld for the most podiums without a win. I think I read somewhere that record had stood for 3,497 days or something like that. It's like, wow, yeah, that's a while.
Jesus,
I'd love to be able to ask him if he's happy about that kind of record, because it's good, having so many podiums, but not having the win. It's like it's a bit backhanded.
It's an interesting one, isn't it? Because he's also, do you think he kicks himself more, that record will hurt more than it would normally, given how close he has come to wins?
Well, it depends how much he focuses on Russia.
Yeah.
Because that one must have hurt. Because it was his mistake. Well, 80-20 his. There was still some fault on the team. But that's a long time ago.
Yeah. It doesn't feel that long ago, but it is quite a while ago. But no, it's it'd be interesting to know what you thought about that record. And probably Nick Heidfeld was celebrating on Sunday. Think, oh, thank God for that. But because that stat then disappears, doesn't it, if he gets the win, because he's no longer without a win. So Nick will get that back, I'm sure, at some point. I'm fairly confident Lando Norris will win a race at some point in his career. Just on his race notes, by the way, Norris said in his post-race quotes, Red Bull and Ferrari were still ahead of them, but the track suited their car. I think that's fair. He was able to manage his tyres nicely and said the car felt good. So good stuff there from McLaren. Another team that sort of like Ferrari now, Fred Vasseur, but at McLaren, since Zach Brown kind of got hold of things, it feels like it's going somewhere. Things feel under control, and it's nice to see. So nothing against Red Bull and Mercedes, but a bit more of Ferrari and McLaren at the front together would be absolutely lovely, rather than fighting for back end points or whatever. Oscar Piastri home Grand Prix. I think P4 was a really good result for him and for the team as well. It's big points in the constructors. That could be, well, looking at where Mercedes are, again, another thing we'll talk about later, but looking at where Mercedes are, that they could be big points for McLaren this year in the Constructors' Championship battle. He did make a mistake, though, turned 13 on lap 38, which cost him around about 4-ish seconds, so that wasn't great for him. He also struggled with graining on the first set of hards, like I think he said Leclerc did as well. Few team orders again at McLaren. He was told on lap 29 to let Norris go for P3, which, in all fairness, Norris was quicker at that stage, and I think that was all about trying to get close to Leclerc, ready for an undercut, but I think Leclerc then pitted and took that option away anyway. Either way, it's still going to hurt a little bit at home race. Apparently the fans were booing, which is interesting, but there you go. He did say after the race, though, that he didn't think he could do much more, so that was pretty much all he could do. Happy with the results. And like I say, Ferrari and McLaren taking up the first four places. It's like the 90s again. I think, I don't like coming down on young drivers for mistakes. It wasn't a massive mistake in that sort of penultimate corner, Jonty, when he went wide, and probably would have been P4 anyway, so it's not disastrous, but the sort of thing that with experience he needs to iron out, because in another race with a Lewis Hamilton or a George Russell or a Fernando Alonso at your backside, that's costing you points, isn't it? So he's got to iron those things out, but he's got to be happy with that. His home Grand Prix, P4.
Well, it probably wouldn't cost him anything if it was George behind him.
Well, no.
No, I mean, it ended up being a reasonable team order, because ideally what I love to see teams do many times is, give the order, let the other one go and have a go because they're faster, and if they don't, they'll just give the place back. If they don't manage to pass whoever it is, or make the difference on a stop, something like that. However, Piastri ended up 30 seconds behind Norris. So clearly it was the right call as far as trying to get more out of it. Could they have still given it back? Possibly, but that could have been very dangerous on the track. So,
yeah,
it would have been nice to just let him have the podium, or at least make Lando work for it. pass him on track.
I said in the testing streams, I really love Oscar Piastri, so I wanted to see him up there on that podium. Not love in a weird way, not weird, but no, I think he's a really, really quick young lad, and I think he's got a lot of potential. But it's a tough teammate to go up against, and I think you're right. It's the right call when you look at things. The other thing I will say is just again to anyone who's tuning in late, any times we say between drivers are a little bit skewed because they might not be the actual gaps because of the virtual safety car, but I can't imagine Piastri lost 30 seconds to Norris just by backing off for Russell being upside down, hanging like a cow. Not quite upside down, but on his side, hanging like a cow in the middle of the track. But yeah, just bear that in mind. But it's still a hefty gap. So I think it's right. I think it's the right call. Same with Ferrari, really. You've got to do what's right for the team, particularly in a season where Red Bull are likely, unless something goes wrong, to win and dominate. And then you've got Aston Martin up and down, McLaren up and down depending on the track. Mercedes are going to be up and down depending on the track. Ferrari look like a good second, but that's they're big points, and McLaren have to do what's right for them. So it is the right call in my view, at least. I'm sure many people will say the same, and some will disagree. We'll come to you in chat for your comments on the top three in a moment. We do need to talk about Red Bull. Interesting. Third team to talk about today. Usually they're the first, which feels weird. We're going to start with Perez. Grid penalty for impeding in qualifying, which didn't really help his cause today. I haven't seen a replay of that yet. I just could not find one for some reason.
Me neither.
So I don't know how bad it was, but I assume it's a communication thing and not getting out of the way. I think it was Nico Hulkenberg, so not sure what's gone on there, but that didn't help him. Neither did losing a place on the start. Was around 15 seconds off the lead before he pitted on lap 15. Struggled with rear grip, which damaged his tyres. So that was probably part of the reason there. Second stint, it was the front tyres he said he destroyed. And Christian Horner post-race, husband of former Spice Girl, said post-race, with Checo we picked up some floor damage. He lost quite a lot of downforce from the underside of the car, and we just became hard on the tyre, which is very unusual for us. Turned out apparently a tear-off got stuck in the floor, and that caused significant load loss as soon as he passed Alonso. Apparently, according to Horner, 20 points worth of downforce was lost, which explains his lack of pace after he'd made that overtake on Alonso, but he wasn't slow before that, but he wasn't about to threaten the Ferraris and ended up 56 seconds off sights come the end of the race. And he did say, Perez, that he thought Ferrari just had too much this weekend, but that too much didn't seem to be a problem for Max Verstappen in qualifying or at the start. So they brought the point up on Sky. I'll ask the question to you as well, Jonty, and to you in chat. Is this where Red Bull are without Max Verstappen? Is this proof of the difference he does make? I know Perez had his issues, but that's a hefty gap in that car off the lead of the race.
That's a tough one.
It's a bitch of a question, and I
can't believe that as incredible as a driver as Max Verstappen is, that he's making that big of a difference.
Combination, how good Max is, and how much Checo underperforms, maybe? Which sounds harsh given the first two races he was second.
Possibly. But again, does make you think that if it is sort of that combination that's led to this result, then how close would the fight for the win have been? I mean, I'm looking at the times now. Perez finished a minute off the lead, 56 seconds. Again, yeah, I know VSC, but even give or take 10 seconds, 3/4 of a minute, there isn't that much difference.
But I'd argue, I don't think that Ferrari were 3/4 of a minute quicker than Max Verstappen in that Red Bull. Again, no. There's things skewing. It's like you said, the virtual safety car, but there's also the tear-off, which, where are you in chat? You were there a second ago. I've lost you. Sighted Canvas says, wow, the cars are that sensitive with the aero when it's slightly compromised by a tear-off. These little things that sound ridiculous to us can have a huge impact. And 20 points of downforce isn't an insignificant amount of downforce to lose, but he didn't look as though he was going to be threatening McLaren or Ferrari. So it could be the tear-off. It could be the fact that he's not performing, which again is harsh because of his performance in the first 2 weekends. It could be because he got off the line and lost a place and was out of position from qualifying. He's lost time in traffic. It feels like it's a factor that's something that's not really been... The reason I brought it up is because it's not really been brought up in the Sky coverage, for example, and a lot of stuff I've read has been about how far behind the Ferraris he was, which is fair, but they've not talked about not just the tear off, but the other factors. So, you get a 3-place grid penalty and you drop into the field on a track that's difficult to overtake on. You're going to hit DRS trains. You're going to hit dirty air. That does damage to your tyres. All of that. How many times do we see Max Verstappen or the race leader by the end of the first lap be 10 seconds clear of somebody, 10 places behind them? If you're in that train of cars, you're going to lose time very quickly. So that's definitely a factor. But the point of a number 2 driver, and this is my bugbear with lots of drivers on the grid, the point of a second driver or a number 2 driver is when the number 1 driver has problems, you need to be there to pick up the pieces. And whichever way you look at it, for whatever reason, Perez didn't do that. But again, that could be because of the issues he was having or because of the traffic or strategy or whatever else. It's just... We're Checo fans, aren't we, Jonty? Let's be clear about that.
Yes.
We like Checo. We've defended him a lot, but I'm just putting myself in Marco's headspace, and he's not going to look at that and say, well, he did have traffic and, this was the case and that was the case. He's going, he was this far off the lead and he needs to be there. And that's my only concern for Sergio Perez. But I'm not going to go jumping on him like so many will and tearing him apart because, again, he did exactly what he needed to do in the first 2 races of the season. That's finished second to Max Verstappen. So if he does that again next time out in Japan in April, by the way, which still is not computing with me, then all of this is sort of irrelevant, really, isn't it? So apparently, some reports today that Perez has already signed a deal. Apparently, I think either Daniel Moxon or Thomas Mayer has dismissed that as nonsense, but there is a rumour doing that. There's also a rumour that Daniel Ricciardo might be out by Miami, but we'll get to that later. I think that's all rubbish. But anything you want to say on Perez, Jonty, as I continue to waffle away, and then I'll get to Verstappen.
Yeah, I think the one point that could really show a lot about Perez in that Red Bull, because we know he's worse than Max, but you also have to think that car is so incredibly refined and perfected aerodynamically. How bad is it when it's in that much traffic?
Like Mercedes when they were
dominating. You see Max romping away into the distance. I mean, is it? I can't remember if it was Bahrain or Jeddah where he actually got Grand Slam. I think it was Bahrain, wasn't it?
Was it both? It might have been both. I didn't get fastest up in Jeddah. No, we didn't know it was Bahrain.
It's something so good out in the clean air. I'm sure there's logical reasoning to think that it's going to be much more affected when it's in all the mess. So that could be a lot of explanation for Perez over the last 2 years, to be quite honest.
Yeah, it's just a thought. I'm not going to get into too much, cause then you end up in speculation, don't you? But disappointing result after a decent start to the season. Let's see what happens in Japan next time out, and we'll see what big weekend for him to bounce back, and that's what I want to see from Perez. Just on a side note, actually, last year when he had difficult weekends around qualifying, he was able to bounce back in the races, but he sort of hit a bit of a rut, didn't he, and went on a bad run. I don't want him to do that after a difficult race yesterday. I want to see him bounce straight back and up to second place or even win in Japan if things go his way. We'll see. But that's all on Sergio Perez. Max Verstappen off the line well and led into turn 1. 0.9 seconds clear at the end of the first lap, which is why I'm umming and ahhing about the pace of the Ferrari. It wasn't quite the second, but that was with a handbrake effectively on his right rear. That was an issue from the start of the race, and he still pulled out 0.9 of a second. Then there was the issue at turn 3 where he lost the rear, which allowed Sainz to get closer. Max said at turn 3 I braked and lost the rear end of the car. It felt weird on the rear axle. Then on turn 6 and 7 it snapped on me. It was overtaken on the run to turn 9. There's a picture on screen now of that one. That was on the second lap of the race. And then on lap 3 I think his brakes were just on fire, exploded on pit entry. Amazingly, his race was over. Right rear brake stuck on from the very start of the race as soon as the lights went out, apparently, and that was like driving with the handbrake on. So it goes back to what I said earlier, how much of that overtake from Sainz was because of the pace of the Ferrari, how much was because of the brake issues, how much of that 0.9 seconds, how much more would that 0.9 seconds have been had Max not had the problems? So many question marks, which we'll never know the answer to, which is fine. You don't have to know the answer to everything, but that's just kind of sums up Max Verstappen's race quite nicely there, or quite horribly if you're a Verstappen fan. He was angry in the garage afterwards. Apparently that was because he was annoyed that the car was on fire and they carried out a normal pit stop rather than just letting him get out of the car. So he was annoyed at that one. But he was quite calm in his interviews. I think when you've won as many races over the last few years as he has, he's got a lot of faith in that car, hasn't he, and what they're doing in the team on track. So I don't think he's going to be concerned that that's the end of his season and the end of his championship and it's all falling apart. He's probably expecting to get in the car in Japan and disappear with that one. But just back to my earlier point, which I think might be a bit controversial, Jonty, and back because of the points I've already made, but I do think his retirement could have been detrimental to the race because he may have disappeared. There's a very good chance he may have disappeared. But Ferrari had that good pace and could have been a threat. So Verstappen DNFing meant we lost that potential battle for the win because Sainz never looked under threat after that. So Sainz was not, 40 seconds up the road dominant, but he was still pretty comfortable. Had Verstappen been up there with him, we might have had a bit more of a scrap there because Verstappen was coming back at him. Despite his brakes smoking away, he was still having a go. So I think we'd have had a better fight at the front throughout the race, potentially, had Verstappen been there. But again, the reason I keep umming and ahhing is because there is that big question mark, isn't there? How good would that car have been in clear air if he got back past Sainz and not had the problems? It's
ironic that it's happened in Australia because we've talked about it before. We got the same problem with the track because the track changes and the new regulations came in at the same time. So we don't know if it was the cars or the track that made it boring.
Yeah.
It's like we don't know if Ferrari were good enough to put a fight to Max because he's out of it, which is a shame. It was dramatic, though. I'll give him that. It's not often you see a break just completely explode like that.
It was a big, I won't say bang, but it was, wasn't it? He came in the pits. Didn't he do two? Or was that, no, might be two replays I saw, sorry. No, one from the rear they showed and one from the front, but it was quite a pop, wasn't it? Good job that didn't happen as he got to his pit box. That would have been...
Yeah, and many have said that, and it's a very valid point. That could have been nasty, even though they're all suited up. I mean, that's still something exploding, and it's carbon fibre coming out at a fair rate of knots.
Into the garage as well, because the pit box, where the pit box is, would have been bang into the garage, wouldn't it? But thankfully not, though. Thankfully not. Like I say, just on my point about it being detrimental, that was my thought when the race happened. That doesn't mean I know the answer to the question, and we'll never know the answer to the question, but anything you want to add on Max Verstappen, Jonty? And I'll put the question to you at the same time so you can sort of answer both of those points, but are you concerned that this could be championship over for Max Verstappen and Red Bull? I'm trying not to laugh, sorry.
No, not yet.
No. It's made it interesting.
I mean, I saw a graphic today that I can't remember who put it up, but it's worth noting. This is the closest after three races the title has been for a while. It's closer than 2021, 22, and 23. So that's worth remembering.
Thank you, Nick, for your super chat. Says, remember Schumacher smoking Ferrari at Melbourne 1998? Everyone speculated afterwards whether he could have fought the McLarens that day. Yeah, his engine went pop, didn't it? Yeah, no, yeah. So I thought 99 for a second there, but that was a chaotic race. No, yeah, I do remember that one, Nick. Thank you very much for your super chat, mate. Appreciate the support. If anyone's got any questions they want to ask us, they can pop them via super chat. We will come to you in chat throughout as well, though. Just very quickly, some comments on these first three teams. A couple of lols at me suggesting that this is game over for Red Bull. It was tongue-in-cheek before anybody gets upset. I don't seriously believe that. I still think Verstappen's going to take the title pretty comfortably. Thank you, Oscar. Says happy belated birthday, Sean. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate that. Del says it's an uphill battle for Max for sure after this setback. If nothing else, it's made the championship table look a bit more interesting. Otherwise, who knows? But got to give us credit for not effing up like Ferrari always did, says Redmond. I think Vasseur gets a lot of credit, and this is his first proper year, so I'm looking forward to this one. Jonathan says he loves you too, I think. Your witty comments and knowledge help me stay in this beautiful community. So that's a nice comment there for you, Jonty. Sarcastic is what I go with. Rather than witty, but yeah, that's fair enough. What is Max going to do? Put wings on you? Maybe. We can hope. He would have disappeared. Let's be very real about it, says Raoul. Fair enough. The funniest thing is that the turn 6 gravel accident, we'll get to that in a second, actually. I'll leave that comment for now, Pedder. We'll come back to that, mate, and see. If Carlos disappeared, then it's most certain that Max would have been invisible to all as well. Actually, Carlos Sainz lapped up to... and including Kevin Magnussen in P10. Do you think if Max had delivered the pace we've seen from that car and did disappear like chat are saying, do you think he could have been close to what Hakkinen and Coulthard did in 1998, lapping up to and including 3rd place? I think it was Heinz-Hauer Frentzen, or 4th place.
No. But now you mention that, he could have been pretty close to around where George and Alonso were fighting.
That could have been tasty.
Yeah, well, if that happens right in front of him, it'd be nasty.
Pogby, great name. Says, good to catch your life for change, Sean. Liking the new format. Thank you very much, mate. Appreciate that one. And it is but a flesh wound, says Sighted Canvas. Anyway, on the subject of Alonso and Russell, let's talk about Alonso and Russell. I'm sort of dreading this, to be honest, because looking at some of the discourse on social media, I have a feeling this is going to get a bit heated in the chat. I don't know why, but some people just like to. So just bear in mind, you know, we're all fans. We're all here to talk about Formula One, and we're going to give a view. And you may not agree with it, but you don't have to get. We have to be a knob about it, is what I'm saying. Just don't be a knob about it. There's no need. It's Monday as well, and I can't be bothered with that kind of nonsense today.
I haven't heard you. You haven't told me your view on it yet, so this could be really interesting.
Well, I think this is 100% on Logan Sargeant, actually. No, it's all his fault. It's all, might as well. We're blaming for everything. So, I'll give my notes for the race first. Alonso drove well for the most part and was able to make a stop under the virtual safety car, which saved him, I think, about 10 seconds, wasn't it, under the virtual safety car, something like that. Said in his post-race quotes that he lost a lot of time when Leclerc exited the pits, but still went on to cross the line in a strong P6. However, there's always a but. After the race, he was given a drive-through penalty converted to a 20-second tyre penalty for the incident with George Russell. So post-race, Alonso said that he wanted to maximise his exit from turn 6 to defend against Russell, which, if you pair that with what he said during his interview in the Pen about battery deployment issues, makes complete and total sense. His exact explanation to the stewards was that he wanted to approach turn 6 differently, lifting earlier and with less speed into the corner. The telemetry showed that he lifted a bit more than 100 metres earlier than he had going into that corner at any other point during the race. He also braked very slightly at that point, although the stewards note the amount was so small that it wasn't the main reason behind the car actually slowing down. Alonso then downshifted at a point he never usually downshifted before upshifting again and accelerated to the corner before lifting to make the corner. Alonso did admit that whilst it was his intention to take a slower corner entry, he got it wrong and had to take extra steps to get back up to speed. Alonso did admit he got it wrong and had to take extra steps to get up to speed, reiterating that point in case anybody missed it. Russell said the manoeuvre was erratic, jumpstart Norris, took him by surprise and caused him to close up to the back of Alonso unusually fast, and with the resulting lower downforce at the apex of the corner, he lost control and crashed at the exit of the corner. Stewards determined the manoeuvre created a considerable and unusual closing speed between the two cars. I'm reading a lot of this because it needs to be read. Now, when it came to issuing the penalty, the stewards said they were focused on the wording of Article 33.4 of the sporting regulations, which, if you are interested, say, at no time may a car be driven unnecessarily slowly, erratically, or in a manner which could be deemed potentially dangerous to other drivers or any other person, and said they did not consider the consequences of the crash. I think that's an important word. I'll tell you why in a minute. They also said they did not have sufficient information to determine whether Alonso's manoeuvre was intended to cause Russell problems. This is what they said in the decision document about the penalty. : I'm reading this from a script. Can you tell? Should Alonso have the right to try a different approach to the corner? Yes. Should Alonso be responsible for dirty air that ultimately caused the incident? No. However, because there's always a but, did he choose to do something with whatever intent that was extraordinary, i.e. lifting, braking, downshiftting and all the other elements of the manoeuvre over 100 metres earlier than previously and much greater than was needed to simply slow earlier for the corner? Yes. By his own account of the incident, he did. And in the opinion of the stewards, by doing these things, he drove in a manner that was, at very least, potentially dangerous, given the high-speed nature of that point of the track, they go on to explain that this season penalty guidelines have been reset, including for this incident increased to a baseline of 10 seconds. In addition, when there is some aggravating circumstances, I hate that phrase, the FIA can consider a drive-through penalty. They add, in this case, we consider that Alonso affirmatively choosing to perform an unusual manoeuvre at this point to be an aggravating circumstance as opposed to a simple mistake. The stewards therefore order a drive-through penalty. I fact-checked all that. It's all from the thing, so don't say I'm making it up because I'm not. Alonso said he did not feel it was a dangerous move and was disappointed to get a penalty for what he described as hard but fair racing and something any other racing driver would do. Russell's post-race quotes weren't very detailed. He says, I don't really know how to explain what happened. I was half a second behind Alonso at 100 metres before the corner, and then suddenly he came back towards me extremely quickly. It was clear that he braked earlier than he had done on previous laps and then got back on the throttle. I wasn't expecting that, and it took me by surprise. I hit the wall and had a dramatic few seconds after that. Did you hear his team radio, actually, Jonty, before I go any further, of Russell in the middle of the track? That
was horrible.
It was horrible to listen to, wasn't it? I was, he'll be moaning or something. He sounded genuinely panicked and terrified.
Yeah, he was terrified. And rightly so. I mean, I'm not going to begrudge him that at all. He knew exactly where he was in the second worst orientation possible. You know, the only way the car could be sat worse is if it's the open cockpit pointing towards an oncoming car instead of the floor.
Yeah.
You know, I'm sure it was absolutely harrowing. And he was right on the radio screaming for a red flag. You know, as I'm sure every other driver would have been doing the same.
Yeah, completely understandably. I would be petrified in that position. I'll ask you that in a minute, actually, Jonty. We need to talk about the incident itself. I was going to ask you about red flags, but I'll ask you about the incident. We'll do that first. So, what are we thinking? Do you want me to tell you what I think first, Jonty, so that you don't think I'm stealing what you're saying? Or
go on.
So, first of all, Alonso, to be clear, has every right to dictate how he wants to take a corner if he's the lead car. It's his prerogative how slow he wants to take that corner to get a better exit, to help defend from the car behind. The problem is he lifts early, brakes a bit, downshifts, upshifts, accelerates, lifts to make the corner, and then accelerates away. It wasn't just a case that he lifted off a bit to go slow in and fast out. So I guess it's not the same thing, but imagine, down the straight weaving more than once to defend from a car. It feels a little bit like on that line for me, if that makes sense. He's not just lifted, gone in slow, accelerated out. He's done a lot in the lead up to that point anyway. So I think it's a comparison. It's also important to note that whilst he doesn't think it was dangerous, he does, in the steward's document, admit he made an error in how he went about it. So when you take that into account and look at the fact his actions contributed to another driver crashing, I can see why they penalised Alonso. But the thing is, or I suppose that is the thing, isn't it? Alonso admits to making a mistake, which ultimately, intentionally or not, led to Russell losing his car. The stewards kind of in that situation have got very little choice, if you know what I mean. Because if a driver goes to you and says, I wanted to take the corner slower so I got a better exit, the stewards will go, that's fine. If you then turn around and say, but I made a mistake and I did too much and I had to correct that, they're going to say, oh, hang on a minute. That's bordering on a completely different thing. So I don't think he intentionally did it to put Russell in the wall or to throw Russell off at all. People have a lot of opinions on Fernando Alonso's driving. I do not think he's, certainly not now, in this stage of his career, I don't think he's a dirty driver at all. I don't think he's done that deliberately to throw Russell into the wall. It is also important to point out a line in the decision document which I think seems to have been missed or misinterpreted by some, because I read some reports and tweets about it before reading the document itself, which I regret. But those said that the stewards have said they didn't consider the consequences of the incident. That's not true. The document says they did not consider the consequences of the crash, which I think could be an important distinction to make, because I read that as them not considering how big the crash itself was, rather than not considering that it led to a crash, if you know what I mean. Because if they didn't take into account that it led to a crash, then it's arguable there's not really much to investigate, if anything at all there. So lifting off early is not against the regulations, if you know what I mean. So I'm sort of... One thing I do know for sure is I think 20 seconds in lieu of a drive-through seems like a lot. I think 10 seconds would have been plenty, but then if the FIA talk about aggravating circumstances, I mean, that line again, where is it? Alonso affirmatively choosing to perform an unusual manoeuvre is why they've given the drive-through. So I'm really torn on it. I kind of see it from both sides. George Russell goes into that corner, not expecting Alonso to kind of come back to him is the phrase he used. It basically means that the closing speed is not what he was expecting. He catches dirty air. He goes into the wall. At the same time, he's the following driver, so surely he has to consider that there's going to be dirty air, but then he can't go through the whole race thinking, what if this driver does something different this time around? Because that's just bonkers. It's I kind of want somebody to tell me why that absolutely is a penalty or why that absolutely isn't a penalty. And other than he's my favourite driver, I don't like the decision, I've not really seen a lot of that anywhere. So I'm hoping you're going to school me now, Jonty, and make me go, no, that's fair enough. Or, what are you talking about, man? Like our usual conversations is what I'm saying.
For me, I had been firmly in the camp of it's not a penalty all along. Because you watch Russell's on board. I'm sorry, you can see it from a mile away. He has so long to react to Alonso being slower going into that corner. Like a week. You've got all of the energy recovery light. You've got the energy harvesting lights going on Alonso's car, so he should then also be expecting him to be slower to some degree. It's like it's almost embarrassing to watch his on board because it's so amateurish the way he comes in there. However, with the details and arguments you've put there, I would agree with 5 seconds. Purely because of them making the distinction of Alonso admitting the mistake. That's what they're basing the penalty on, the mistake he made after his intention. You get me? Yeah, they didn't blame him for trying to do something different to keep his position. It was the fact that he made a mistake in doing it. So 5 seconds would be fair, because may I refer you to Canada 2019? The last.
Refer me to anything you like, Jonty.
The last ultra controversial argument over a penalty we've seen. Vettel made a mistake and got 5 seconds for it. Still undecided on that one. Not going to go into it, but there's a precedent. With regard to him calling it, some people calling it a brake check, which it wasn't.
It was not a brake check, no.
And then going, look at the telemetry. Yes, the telemetry shows it wasn't a bloody brake check. Just because he used the brake a little bit doesn't mean it's a brake check. A brake check, means that the driver behind's had to slam on the anchors, which is not the case. Over the last few years, we've got multiple other precedents of things like that with lighter penalties. The fact they've given him 20 seconds and 3 penalty points is absolutely disgusting. It really is. And I know it's not the same stewards, but it's still FIA sanctioned series. When you see something else that happened at Melbourne that only got a 3-place grid drop, it makes it even more sour taste in the mouth. When you have a driver in F3 literally using their car as a weapon, planting someone in the wall, and they got a 3-place grid drop. What kind of message is this sending to the younger drivers? Like, oh, you can slam someone off the track, but and that's fine. But if you make a little bit of mistake, your race is going to get ruined. It's everything about it is just wrong and asinine.
Just going back on the brake check thing, just to the document for anyone who still might be saying it is a brake check. I've not seen chat yet, but the stewards note the amount was so small that it wasn't the main reason behind the car slowing. That's not a brake check. Now, here's one for your chat, and here's one for you, Jonty. I've had in my head all day, and I should have Googled it, and I forgot. Montoya and Villeneuve? Monaco? I seem to recall one of them had a bit of, I think it might have been, whichever one it was, 2 hot-headed drivers. One pulled in front of the other during, it was either practice or qualifying, and slammed the brakes on. That's a brake check. What Alonso did was not a brake check. He touched the brakes, but not enough to slow the car, or the reason it slowed as much as it did. But, the whole argument, as you've said, Jonty, rests on the fact that he said, look, I wanted to take the corner. more slowly on entry and be faster out of it. Is it Sir Jackie Stewart or is it Sterling Moss whose great argument is slow in, fast out when it comes to racing? You know, it makes sense. He's got a car that's struggling with battery deployment. He's got a car behind him who's much quicker and wants to get past. He wants a slower entry so he can get a better exit and run that long run at the best possible speed he can. So it's absolutely reasonable to do that, and it's his prerogative to do that. But it wasn't just one lift, and that seems to be that, and the fact that he's admitted to getting it wrong. The stewards have had to take action, and you can't have a driver walk into a room saying, "Yeah, I made a mistake," and then just dismiss it as, "Oh well, never mind. Go on, Fernando, you little scamp. You get back. You're fine." What's your take then? So we can go around in circles on this.
I've still got one other point on this.
I was just going to say, just very quickly then, just to add to your point when you get there, the line of them not considering the crash versus not considering the incident. Do you read that the same way as me, that they're not, that by saying crash in the document, they're saying they're not considering the severity of the crash rather than ignoring it completely?
That's the point I still had, and I don't think it matters which one they mean, because either way, personally to me, that means that the stewards are lying. Because without a crash happening, that never even gets looked at. No one even notices. You would have a post-race interview of George saying, "Oh, I lost it a bit. It looked like Fernando made some kind of mistake when I was trying to get to him." That's as far as it would ever go. I genuinely believe that.
Do you think
the fact that there was a crash is the only reason the stewards looked at it. So whether they mean the fact that there was a crash or the severity of crash, it doesn't matter what their wording means. The fact that the crash happened is the only reason they ever looked at it in the first place. So that line shouldn't be in there at all. By rights, it should mean that how big the crash is doesn't matter. That's what it should mean with these.
Yeah, that's how I've read it.
With the investigations. Whether it does or not, I don't know. And I think I've beaten this drum before, but Johnny Herbert shouldn't be a driver steward. Absolutely not.
I don't think I may be wrong, but I don't recall you ever saying Johnny Herbert shouldn't be a driver steward. Steward.
I like Johnny Herbert.
Yeah,
don't get me wrong.
Why?
But the point I've been on all this time, and it's particularly relevant here because of how the cars behave and what have you, is that drivers who've never raced in at least the hybrid era shouldn't be driver stewards because they have literally no idea how these cars handle or behave. The only viable driver steward we have right now is Tony Oliozzi. And I'm not trying to say anything against all the various drivers we've got, because there are some legend in there. Emmanuel Pirro, an incredible driver, multiple Le Mans wins and what have you. But the last time he raced in a competitive car, well, a Formula One car, it had a freaking manual gearbox and a clutch. He has no idea what these cars are capable of. He doesn't know what the braking distances are from a driver's perspective. He can read the numbers and hear drivers say, "Oh, it's like, they'll be braking 70 meters or 60 meters here, what have you." But unless they've actually done it, they can't have a really objective viewpoint on how an incident has played out. They just can't. It's a simple fact. No matter how experienced they are in other races, in other types of cars, or they could have had a 30-year Formula One career. Unless they've driven these within at least from 2014, they just can't know. They can't. Jarno Opmeer will have a more valid input on these cars than Herbert or Pirro.
So to confirm, you have made that point before, and I think I've made the point before. We've had the discussion before. It was just the fact you said. So it's not Johnny Herbert specifically. So if Damon Hill had been there this weekend, you'd have said the same, or if it had been Eddie Irvine, Why? But if it had been Eddie Irvine, you'd have said the same. It's or David Coulthard. Well, not David Coulthard, maybe not, because he's sort of driven these cars, hasn't he? So yeah, no. So no, I agree with your point. I was just, when you said Johnny Herbert, I was like, what's Johnny done? What have I missed? But no, it's the valid point. You're absolutely right. It's
Oh, don't get me wrong. I'm aware that there are a lot of people. I'm sure there's some in the chat. There's plenty on Twitter who think that Johnny Herbert has a full raging anti-Alonso agenda, and he may well not get on with him. Entirely possible. There may be a slight bit of bias, but I mean, I don't think it played that much in this case, if there is one.
I don't buy into that. There will be biases, of course there will. And we know they've had their moments, but they're not the same thing. But there are drivers on the grid I really don't like, but they'll always get a fair assessment from me. And I'd like to think if I was in that position, I'd do the same.
Oh, yeah, me too.
I don't think Johnny would be sat there, and even if he did sit there going, I don't like Alonso, so I'm going to give him a penalty, there are other stewards there who could say, shut up, Johnny, you've just been an idiot, look at the facts and nothing else. So, or you'd like to think it's the FIA, fuck knows what they're doing anymore. Let's have a look at what you say in chat. I have put a second poll up. The first poll, by the way, super quickly, did end in favour of a good race, I believe. 47% of you said it was a good race, 32% said average / okay, 15% said great, 4% say bad. I'm still in the classic Sean on the fence, okay with good moments, but I think that's a fair poll. We'll leave it to the poll up for a little while. I've said, should Alonso have been given a penalty in your opinion? Yes, 26%, 53% say no, still not sure, 22%. I wish I'd have put a different option in there, actually. I wish I'd have put yes but smaller, because I still think 20 seconds is harsh, and yeah, but there you go. I'll leave that on for a little bit longer. See what we've got in chat.
Raul, just back on what I was saying, just with a little point of how you always get F2 drivers going into F1 cars for free practice or what have you, and they are all surprised by the braking.
Yeah.
And that's from F2. So it shows how big it is, and F2s destroying F1 lap times from like 20 years ago. So.
Raul says, isn't the break point moot due to the fact it's insignificant? Yeah, I think I said that, Raul, just to confirm I did say that. Also, when I see the phrase, isn't that moot, I just think of Joey from Friends and say, isn't that moo? It's like a cow's opinion, doesn't matter. Sorry. Nick says, the real issue here is it should have been an instant red flag. Even back in the 90s, the race would have been stopped with the car damaged and sitting in the middle of the track. Get to that in a moment before we move on. I definitely want to ask Jonty about that one. 20 seconds penalty under VSC is about 10-second penalty at racing speed. Says, is it Emad? Disagree on penalty points, agree on a form of penalty. Says Marta. 3 penalty points is harsh. I'd agree on that. That's another thing I'd say is harsh. Again, given that some of the things we've seen in the past and you get 1 penalty point or no penalty point, it seems a little bit over the top. Nuke Dukem says, so in my opinion, it's down to the fact that he's slowed down to a point of needing to accelerate again. He can start slowing down and coasting early, but not so early. He has to speed up again, in my opinion. Again, it's the 2 moves thing. It's not the same thing. It's probably a silly comparison, but it's the 2 moves thing. Effectively, you could make that. Yeah. John says they are lying. They clearly gave it a penalty because of the crash. I think that's on that point. I think I'm reading that differently to everybody else, clearly, which isn't a great surprise. But I think Jonty's right in that they should just word it then. We're not taking into account the severity of the crash, and then that clears up any kind of...
yeah, it's not hard to add one specific word, is it?
But have you read the full document? It actually reads...
It's
less
absurd.
Like,
it's
less
absurd.
Like they're trying to explain the penalty and more like they're trying to justify it. Specifically, should Alonso have the right to try and take a different approach to the corner? Yes. Should Alonso be responsible for dirty air that ultimately caused the incident? No. Like, who wrote this? Johnny Herbert? It's really weird. Perez says Coulthard, Schumacher in the wet. Schumacher lost sight, slams into Coulthard, then blames him. Coulthard, Michael, all due respect, I didn't reverse into you. Oh, but I'm sorry, Pedder, mate. That's Coulthard's fault all day long. Tongue in cheek, Schumacher fanboy, and all of that, just to be clear. Miss ZZ says the F3 collision wasn't considered an attempt to hit the other car. It was interpreted as a swerve that was done badly, and the revenge swerve was punished. Jonty is spot on all day again. Holy crepes, says Marta. And one more. If he doesn't crash, 1,000,000% this never gets investigated. So there we go. I will end the poll, because I've got another one for you in a bit. If we get that far, we're running over already. Should Alonso be given a penalty? 53% say no, 26% say yes, 20% say still not sure. I'd be interested to know what that would be. I'm not going to do it again, but I would be interested what that would be if people were saying yes, but 5 seconds or 10 seconds. But maybe we'll do that on something else at some point. I don't know. Anyway, still to come, we're going to talk about Hamilton and Stroll, because we need to talk about them while we're talking about Aston Martin and Mercedes. That'll be quick, though. I do want to touch a little bit on some positives and Tsunoda's excellent weekend. I'll do the rundown. And, of course, we'll talk about Williams and take some of your questions as well towards the end of the stream. But as we have been talking about it, Gavner, as we've been talking about Aston Martin and Mercedes, we'll talk about Lewis Hamilton and Lance Stroll very quickly as well to round this part off. Yeah, we've spent a long time on their teammates. I think we ought to move on from that. I think we'll go around in circles otherwise. So I'm not abruptly cutting it. I just think we need to move on at some point. So Hamilton, I think it's fair to say, not happy with the car all weekend and really seemed to struggle. Actually ran wide on the grass at turn 1 at one point as well. So I think that was around lap 9 or 10, somewhere around there. So yeah, did gain some paces early on, he said in his press release, in part thanks to the soft tyre. But his race came to an end when his car lost power on lap 16. Andrew Shovlin said the team had no warning about the power unit failure and will investigate what happened when the unit gets back to Brixworth, which I assume will be a little while yet. Hamilton believes his race was going okay up until that point and was beginning to press on until the failure. I suppose kind of a broad question, really. I don't think it's controversial to say that Hamilton wasn't happy all weekend with that car. I don't think Hamilton's happy with that car. I think Hamilton's very happy with the decision he's made about his future right now, because God knows what's going on. But Mercedes, just nowhere. But I'm not totally surprised. A bit like McLaren, the opposite. I expected, and me and Stuart talked about it in the last debrief we did, that the track was not going to suit Mercedes because of the high-speed corners. And as we saw in Jeddah, they're dreadful in the high-speed corners. And then you've got Japan next with high-speed corners, which is going to be difficult for them. So it could be a difficult few weeks to be a Mercedes fan or a Mercedes driver, to be honest. I was going to say what's going on, but I guess if they don't know, Jonty, I can't imagine you're going to know the answer to that one.
I have no idea what's going on with that car. Because this is supposed to be redone from the ground up. This isn't trying to salvage a different design philosophy. This is meant to be all new. And still not doing it. The only thing that keeps going around my head is, are these last 3 cars just showing us what happens when Merc can't throw $500 million every season?
Just having a look for comments made by Susie Wolf's husband. Red Raven just saying, I assume you've read what Toto said in the last 2 days. You might need to be more specific, mate. He said a lot. Toto's like me, he talks a lot. I know he says he wants to punch himself in the nose, which is fair enough. Yeah, so I'll have a look for that if there's something I've missed specifically. Red Raven, good evening. I hope you're all right, mate. But yeah, but obviously the power unit failure as well. That's, for so long, this Mercedes was so reliable, but it's gone pop again. And 12 months after George Russell's engine went bang at the same race, didn't it, of course, last year? So really frustrating for Mercedes, really frustrating for Lewis Hamilton. And I can't really comment on the engine because they've not got it back at Brixworth yet, so they won't have an answer themselves. They've got to investigate that. So it didn't sound rough, did it? It just almost shut off. So I don't know what's gone on there, but very disappointing for Lewis Hamilton. I think 8 points from the opening 3 races. Probably more emails sent to Frederick Vasseur in the last 3 races than points on the board. Hey, Fred, don't suppose that seat's come up anytime soon, has it? And then Carlos Sainz turns up and does that. No, mate, we'll see you next year. I'm only joking, obviously. Red Raven says it's about his future in the team. Yes, I haven't got the quote, but he did say something along the lines of, it's right to question his future at the team because of what's happening at the moment. It's that kind of thing. So, and that's fair. You know, the book stops with the manager, doesn't it, at the end of the day, Jonty? It's the same in football. Not quite the same thing, I know, but or in most businesses, actually, thinking about it. But yeah, anything you want to add on Lewis Hamilton and Mercedes from this weekend? I did see somebody ask about maybe could that run across the grass have caused some damage to the engine? It wasn't an aggressive bump, was it? It wasn't.
Well, we saw from I saw a few drivers run wide in F2 that kicked up a lot of grass, so it was recently mown. Maybe that could have blocked up some radiators, but I can't think of anything else than that.
Have a look for those Toto Wolff quotes at some point, Red Raven. Probably tonight. I might try and do it on stream when we're doing Q&A, but we'll see how we go. Just a frustrating weekend for Mercedes and Lewis Hamilton. Very frustrating for Mercedes. Both drivers retiring, of course. What points did they score? 26. Good God. Remember they were winning every weekend. Lots changed. I did wonder, actually, and this is probably one for another stream, but I might throw it at chat for people a bit more with it. I don't know. Is part of this down to the fact that they've had to effectively go with a new philosophy, so they're behind everybody in terms of development? Because, no, forget that point. Red Bull built a new car this year and still look fucking incredible, so that's a crap excuse. Sorry, no. Lance Stroll started ninth and finished 8th on the track, promoted to P7 following Alonso's penalty. He gained a couple of places on the first lap and I think drove a nice clean race. Didn't really see a lot of him. Jonty's going to tell me now something he saw, but I didn't see much of Lance Stroll. Said the key to his race was tyre management due to high degradation. That was a story for a lot of drivers. But he looked after them well and helped the team grab some more points. Points, by the way, that mean they still grabbed 12 in total despite Alonso's penalty. So I think they would have 14 without that. So it's not a disaster that he got the penalty, but, it's still going to hurt. Perhaps maybe that's why Mike Cracker's decided just to accept that decision and move on, because it's not really destroyed their weekend in terms of points gathering for the team. So Lance Stroll, Jonty, what have you got for Lance Stroll? Except he's a legend, obviously.
Not a lot, because we didn't really see much of him. He had one of those lonely races where he basically kept out of trouble with most people and cruised around to a decent result.
Yeah, my
he didn't throw it at a wall, so it was a great race.
Yeah. My check hasn't cleared either, so I can't really say a lot about him. So, come on, Lawrence, crack on. Yeah, no, sorry, Hamilton and Stroll fans. Stroll fans? Yeah, there's quite a few on Twitter, isn't there? I was just trying to think then. Yeah, quite a few on Twitter, Stroll fans.
All you can say about Hamilton's weekend was just miserable. Stroll's was just quiet.
He did. I had the stats up earlier. I was doing them. He... Unless I'm wrong, I'm just going to check now. Where is quali and race stats? There we go. I think he out-qualified Alonso.
Sloth is quite right. Yeah, he beat Alonso in qualifying.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
So, that's a feather in his cap, because he hasn't done it much.
No, that's a good point. I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, thank you, Pedder, for... Well, Jonty spotted that. I was on my stats table. But thank you very much. Yeah, good point on Lance Stroll. So, positives there. Yuki Tsunoda. I got to talk about Yuki because I like to do positives from time to time and not just be all negative. Really great drive. Some people might say that's a bit over the top, but I think he drove really, really well all weekend. Qualified up in where was he? P8. Well clear of his teammate, by the way. And picked up P7 on Sunday for some pretty important points for RB. 6 points, actually. So, well done to him there. Well clear of Ricciardo, like I say, in the race. We'll get to Ricciardo in a second. Tsunoda did lose a couple of positions off the line, which given the cars around him, probably wasn't a huge stop, but he was still P9 and moved to P8 when Verstappen retired. Didn't see that much of him, like Jonty said about Stroll, but he made kind of no mistake. Strategy was executed perfectly and was able to snatch those big points. Said post-race the car felt good, which is good to hear. Pretty much right from the off in Melbourne and stayed consistent throughout the weekend. He added that the car looks good ahead of Japan and he's targeting points. Again, a great effort from Yuki. Results like that and continues to beat his teammate is going to give him a great shot at probably keeping that seat. I still don't see him moving to Red Bull. No offense, Yuki. But you never know. If he keeps performing like that and improves even further, then it might take him on or he might find somewhere else. But I think he's really making his case. It is only one result, of course, though, as I'm sure somebody will try and put me up on in a minute. So have to be fair. Let's see what happens from him. But a good baseline to build from. And Yuki seems to have come into this season on a bit of a mission, I think, Jonty. Really quite determined to stake a claim for a seat somewhere next year and beyond.
Yeah, I mean, you say it is a result, but only just one result. It's still a whole lot better than no results.
Yep.
But he has come in renewed, although we've said that 2 years in a row now, saying he's come in looking different, looking focused, and then it usually kind of falls away mid-season, sort of usually around the middle of the European leg. Remains to see if it happens again, but if he can keep that focus going, then he'll be pretty much nailed on for that seat, because Danny's not really giving him any trouble.
Early prediction, I think Tsunoda, not just based on this weekend, but I think Tsunoda will be in that car next year anyway, not the Red Bull, the RB, because I think that final year with Honda, they're going to want a Japanese driver, aren't they? It was part of that program as well. Oh, by the way, on the subject of Japanese drivers, sorry, super quickly, Ayumu Iwasa will do FP1 in Japan for RB, so it's an all Japanese lineup in FP1 in a couple of weeks' time for RB, so that'll be nice. That'll take
That's going to bring in a lot of money.
It will. And it ticks one of their boxes as well, doesn't it, for the rookie thing for FP1. So they've got that out nice and early. So well done there for them. Although no. Well, there's a question. Sorry, random point. That's Ferrari won't have ticked that off, will they, with Ollie Behrman, because he took part in FP3. And it's FP1 where you make the driver change. They did run him in the car, though, didn't they? So they might let them have it. That's one to keep an eye on. But yeah, no. Just thought I'd let you know that one. But yeah, really, really good stuff from Tsunoda this weekend. A bit more of that, and I think he'll be fine. Consistency is something we sort of talk about quite a lot.
He's not known for.
Well, I was going to say similar, but then he did finish like 11th place for about 6 races in a row or something stupid like that last year. So he can deliver consistency, but he doesn't consistently deliver consistency, if you follow what I mean by that. So, but I was impressed with him this weekend. But again, you could go back to the arguments of other teams. How much of that is because Tsunoda was brilliant, and how much of that was because Ricciardo wasn't? But ultimately, as you say, Jonty, he delivered the result, and Ricciardo didn't. So that doesn't really matter, does it? He's still delivering, and I think he'll be in that seat next year if he keeps that up for sure. But I like Yuki, and a lot of people don't like his anger in the cockpit. I think it does boil over too much sometimes, but at the same time, I do like quite hearing the passion in F1 drivers every now and again, rather than just the PR crap we get. You'll notice if you do content creation or journalism, or you like to read up on the press releases, that what you read in the press release is pretty much word for word what they say in the pen, and pretty much word for word what they say in every interview afterwards. It's nice to hear a bit of anger, but I can't imagine that's going to go down well if he went to Red Bull at any point. But yeah, good stuff from Tsunoda. Ricciardo, disappointing again. In fairness, 18th to 12th isn't bad, but it's well off his teammate. Okay, he did have a lap time deleted for track limits in quali, but that was his mistake, nobody else's, so he's got to own that, and I think he did, to be fair. Said in his post-race quotes that he struggled with grading in the first stint, but he was more competitive in the second stint. His lap times, according again to those quotes, were encouragingly around the 121s, and he also said he feels he's still not carrying enough speed in some corners. What got me, though, Jonty, was that Jody Eggington, the team's technical director, you know that, said in the same press release, and I'm going to read you this word for word. Daniel's weekend has been less straightforward, but credit to him. He has got his head down and worked very hard together with his engineers to get the car more towards his liking. Although the result does not show it, there are some good signs of progress, which I expect we can start to capitalise on in the next events, with the target of getting him into the fight at the sharp end of the midfield battle as soon as possible. Now, I know he's addressing Ricciardo gaining confidence in the car and making progress in that regard, and that's fine, but that's the kind of quote I'd expect a senior member of a team to make about an 18-year-old rookie, not a 34-year-old driver with 242 F1 starts under his belt. You'd expect, with that much experience, and to be fair, the raw speed he's shown in the past in Formula One, that he'd be able to adapt much more easily than he is doing. So I wanted to read that quote because it just threw me a little bit, because it's the sort of thing you'd expect to read Ferrari say about Ollie Behrman or something like that, or who's a rookie this year. Give me a rookie. We haven't got any, have we? No. Logan Sargeant last year. It doesn't fill me with confidence for Ricciardo's situation, and hopefully, he's got to get to grips with that car, and hopefully he does that soon, because if he doesn't start to improve, and Yuki Tsunoda continues to do what he's doing, he can wave goodbye to that Red Bull seat and probably the RB1 as well.
Yeah, I mean, it was more in jest, but I posted some random tweet reply of a crazy prediction for the year back in February saying, I can't remember now. It was like, who finishes last in the championship? I said, Ricardo, because Lawson will take his seat after less than 10 races. I'm starting to worry that that's going to be accurate, because I really don't see why they would keep him with these kind of performances. And it's not like he's just come in again. He's had a while.
And it's a lot of experience. I know Red Raven says history shows Ricardo struggles heavily to adapt, so I'm not unsurprised. But it's just the way it's worded. It just I don't think the team are suggesting anything or hinting anything. It's just that when you read that, you think they're talking about a younger rookie driver, and it's someone of Daniel Ricciardo's. And people will laugh at this, but once upon a time it was true caliber. He was one of the best on the grid, wasn't he? He was hot property once upon a time. That move from Red Bull shocked everybody. But it'd been linked to other seats before, Ferrari, Mercedes, all sorts of people. So he was hot property once upon a time, and it's just not working for him. Maybe it's this era of cars, I don't know. But it's a problem, and Red Bull are not patient people, as we know. So he's going to have to step it up. It is only 3 races, but a bit like Nick De Vries in some ways, but with a lot more F1 experience in the case of Ricciardo. They can't treat him like a young driver. They need him to get in that car, get up to speed straight away, and deliver. That's what they need him to do. That's why he's there. Even Tsunoda, 4 years in the sport now. This is 4th season. He's got to be getting on with it. But he's not going to get the leeway that a Liam Lawson or an Iwasa would get, for example. But I'm sure you've read the rumour, Jonty. You probably know I'm going on such of Liam Lawson, my Liam Lawson. Apparently, and this has been, I should say, from pretty reputable sources, to be fair, has been dismissed. There is a rumour that Liam Lawson could be in the car from Miami if Daniel Ricciardo doesn't step it up. I don't believe that. I think if they're going to make a change, it'll be nearer to the mid-season. They did it before the summer break with Nick De Vries, to be fair, but a few people saying that Red Bull's official line on that is that there are no plans to make that change. That's that word again, Jonty, intention. We don't intend to. Doesn't mean they're not going to. But just thought I'd put in there, given what you said. You brought Liam Lawson up. I didn't this time. It's not my fault. Jonty did it. But it does seem great. I said this to Stuart the other week. It's bonkers to me that a team that is, whether they admit it or not, still very much a junior team, aren't. You've got Liam Lawson sat there yawning and falling. There's a picture later of him falling asleep at a table. And then you got Daniel Ricciardo falling asleep in the car, I suppose you could say, if you want to be really harsh about it. But it just frustrates me as a Liam Lawson fan as well, so there's bias there. So,
it frustrates me as just as a racing fan. Particularly, it's something we've complained about for a long time. There's not enough seats for the good talent to get a shot. When you look at Lawson's filling in last year, he was outstanding. Like, about as good of a performance as you could possibly hope for stepping into that car under those circumstances. And continually did that for all of the races that he was in. Like, how do you keep someone who's consistently underperforming when you've got a star prospect right there, ready to go, who can't go anywhere else? It's, what are you doing?
Pedder's made some great. Everybody has some great comments tonight, but this is fair. So, judging from Daniel's own comments after Melbourne, it seems like. It seems a lot like Daniel knows what he needs to fix, and he is looking to do that, adapting, but it's tricky, not that he's under pressure. Additionally, he strongly emphasised this was different from his slump at McLaren where he didn't understand the car. They're fair comment. The only thing I'll say on the under pressure thing, you're always under pressure if you're in a Red Bull. Whether it's, as you know, Pedro, it's a Red Bull or an AlphaTauri or a Toro Rosso or an RB or whatever they're called, you're always under, like at Ferrari, you're always under pressure. So a few bad races, this kind of thing is going to come up. But a bit like I said about, to a lesser extent, but with Perez, if Daniel Ricciardo now picks up 10th place in Japan, beats his teammate and finishes 11th in China and picks up a couple of points in Miami, all of this disappears. All of this vanishes. So that's what he needs to do. Just bounce back and adapt and crack on with it. But yes, we'll leave it there on RB. If you've got any questions, we can come to that later. Don't worry, we can do that. We'll cover anything we missed as well. But Jonty's first time witnessing this one. I'm going to do the rundown. So I'm going to go through the remaining teams, which are Haas, Sauber, and Alpine. Yes, I know I'm missing one, but we'll get to that in a minute. And then after I've gone through those with my notes, I'll go to Jonty and he can tell me if there's anything he wants to add on those. If not, we'll go straight on to Williams. So the rundown. It's all very, very exciting, isn't it? Haas, it was a double points finish for the team, and it's so nice to see them competing well on a Sunday this year. Got to say that. Hulkenberg went from 16th on the grid to 9th in the race. He said the first virtual safety car helped him, and he was able to overtake a car at each of his stops at the pit exit, which I didn't see. So he was happy with his result. He did say, though, that this was made possible due to retirements from the front, adding, and I'll quote him, "It's still the case where if the top 5 teams finish, there's not much left." But he was more encouraged in the race that the car felt better than in qualifying, the absolute opposite, of course, of last year. So that is really nice to read. Magnussen started in 14th and finished in 10th. Unlike his teammate, Magnussen was actually hindered by the virtual safety car. He is also encouraged by the car, though, and reiterated that race pace was better than qualifying. Again, so nice to hear that from both drivers. He had a couple of slower than ideal pit stops, not race destroying, but still, once again, great stuff. Just generally, I've got here, this is a word I've written 3 times. Great stuff. Both Haas drivers had to do some defending, which in the case of Hulkenberg, Albon described as dangerous. He felt there was too much moving going on in the braking zone, and to be fair, there was some movement from Hulkenberg on lap 34 at turn 11, but I don't think enough there for the stewards to get involved. But one to raise an eyebrow maybe, and probably brown trouser time for Alex Albon. Valtteri Bottas at Sauber, P14 from P13 on the grid. To be fair, about where I'd expect them to be at the moment. Bottas did say, though, that things were going well until the pit stop, surprise, with a good start and strong pace, even feeling they should have scored points. I'll let you decide that one in chat. His race was again affected by his nuts, specifically his wheel nuts. I've actually written that and I wasn't going to read it, and I did. Alessandro Lini-Bravi saying it was a slightly different issue, but was still linked to what happened in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia. But mitigating measures improved the situation, and obviously didn't totally solve it, but, helped it, is kind of the point I've made here. Got to be fixed. I think Martin Brundle said it's a design issue, so that's going to take some time. Hopefully a fix for that soon. Zhou Guanyu started in the pit lane and ended up in P15 just behind his teammate. He was, like his teammate, running fairly well, but said after the race that he got stuck in a DRS train, which made overtaking difficult. He did have an issue at his pit stop. Wasn't a wheel nut. It was a gearbox issue in one of his pit stops, which added to his problems, and that cost him big time. Alpine, Pierre Gasly, 5-second time penalty for crossing pit exit line, an absolute slam dunk. Didn't cost him a position, though, as he ended the day in P13. He actually drove well, to be fair, and the car looked to be a little bit more competitive than at the first 2 races, a little bit. Esteban Ocon, again, there seemed to be some progress, but his race was derailed after having to make an extra pit stop to remove a tear off that had got stuck in the rear left brake duct. Ocon said on social media, by the way, that he felt points were possible had he not made the extra pit stop. Also, our social media of the weekend, kudos to Alpine. They posted after Max Verstappen retired, double overtake on Verstappen, so that was a nice moment for them to celebrate. Charles Leclerc got the fastest lap. Carlos Sainz was unsurprisingly voted driver of the day by the fans. That was a lot of waffle and a lot of notes that I tried to elaborate on the fly, so apologies there. But anything you want to add on Haas, Alpine and Sauber, Jonty, specifically around Bottas's nuts, would be nice.
Haas was great to see. Clearly, they've sorted out a lot of the issues. Alpine and Sauber were there, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the one thing that really highlights it for me is the fact that Alpine are still behind Sauber in the constructors, based on countback finishes, despite Sauber having this issue in all 3 races. Although they did, I think they double DNF the first race. Alpine.
You tested me there. I think so, yeah. Yeah. It's a mess, isn't it?
If only there was another outfit that wanted to come into the sport and be competitive.
I'm not starting Jonty off on that. There is no way.
That's all I can. Honestly, that's all I'm thinking when I see Alpine at the moment. The car, it's heavy, it's slow, it's clearly not very reliable. It eats its tires. It's like, what is it even there for?
There are a few teams you could argue that about, I think, to be fair. Should we just move on then? Let's just move on. Williams, last team I want to talk about. I've left them till very last because it's sort of going back to earlier in the weekend. But just very quickly, Albon's race ended up P11, not far off the points at all, actually, less than a second. I know, again, that was because of the virtual safety car, but he was only 3 seconds behind Magnussen before the VSC came out. So he was not a million miles away from a point, which I think James Vowles really could have done with him getting. His post-race quotes were interesting, as he says a pit stop masked the car's true pace in the race, having tried to stay in the race by pitting early and getting back track position, but ultimately the pace of those around them was too strong. He added that every time he tried to match the pace of the teams they were racing, he suffered with graining. He was frustrated not to be able to capitalise on the retirements ahead. That, though, is not the biggest story at Williams this weekend. Of course, the big talking point was that Albon crashed his car in practice, lost the car at turn 6 and hit the wall at turn 7. That crash damaged the chassis, and so the team could only run one car for the weekend, and they chose to give Albon Logan Sargeant's car, as they felt Albon was more likely to score points if the opportunity presented itself. It almost did, and he didn't, but it was, again, a few seconds in it, I think as good as points, but obviously as good as points doesn't really count in the championship, does it? So I gave my brief thoughts on it in a video on Friday just to cover the news. I think it is, no one's going to convince me that wasn't brutal on Logan Sargeant, given that he didn't make the mistake that Albon did. But also no one's going to convince me that, or no one's going, I can't sit here and say to you that if I was James Vowles and I'm sat there with a choice between letting Albon race and Sargeant race, I'm not making the same decision. I think you look at last season, you look at the start to this season, Albon, if there's going to be a chance for points, he's the one you want in that car. So it doesn't make it any less harsh on Sargeant. It doesn't make it any less brutal. And I know a few people disagree with, or quite a few people disagree with me on the video on Friday, when I sort of questioned why you'd keep him if you don't trust him effectively. And a few people said, at the end of the day, maybe they do trust him, but they trust Albon more. And that's fair enough. That's a fair comment. But nobody is going to convince me ever that that's a ringing endorsement of Logan Sargeant, because it isn't a ringing endorsement of Logan Sargeant. It's as simple as that. I think the decision, even looking back at the race, yes, Albon missed out by a few seconds on points, but would Logan Sargeant have been a few seconds off the points on Sunday? Probably not. So I think it's the right decision from James Vowles, all things considered. Not that it matters because it's his decision, not ours, but it's still got to hurt Sargeant, hasn't it, Jonty? But he carried himself well, to be fair. He understood it for the team. I don't know what's in his contract. He might have to contractually do that, but I think he took it well. But still, that, like I said, it's not a ringing endorsement, is it, of Logan Sargeant, whichever way you look at it?
No, not at all. It is so harsh. But like you say, if you're using just your head, I don't believe anyone would not make the same decision. Especially when there is such a tight fight down there. Did he get the point in the end? No, but it's still P11. And that can make all the difference. That's what they have to be thinking about. It's not just about points for the bottom sort of 3 or 4 teams. Those count-back finishes can and do and have made the difference between 10 million and 20 million. So it's kind of a damned if he does, damned if he doesn't situation. Everyone's going to hate him for giving the car to Albon. But then everyone will be saying, oh, you were stupid if he keeps Logan in.
Yeah, it wasn't a win-win situation, was it, for him? It was wrong, whatever he did, in whoever's eyes. But then as the team boss, he's got to be strong, and he was strong. I think that's... You've got to give the credit to James Vowles there. He had to make a decision. He made a decision, a tough one, but he made it, and it nearly paid off. I don't think Sargeant would have been P11 today, 3 seconds off the points, or yesterday, 3 seconds off the points, but we'll never know. I still feel for him. I think a few people, and I know I've just said that it's not a ring endorsement, but I won't attack him for it. But a few people have used it as a stick to beat him with. I had a lot of people in the comments and sit on social media talking about him being a bad driver. I'll reiterate the point I will always say, and people will not agree, but I don't care. There are no bad drivers in F1. Every single one of them has to be at least capable enough of obtaining a super license in order to make it to F1. So they're not bad drivers. There are drivers who perhaps aren't good enough for Formula One, but they're not bad drivers. They've all got pedigree, and yes, that includes Lance Stroll before you start. Absolutely, he had a very good junior career, actually, did Lance Stroll, but and Logan Sargeant, he did well in his junior career, and Williams gave him a chance, but it doesn't, you don't have to batter him. He's had a bad weekend as it is and tearing him apart. And I don't think it was said enough either, by the way, Jonty, that for all the criticism Sargeant got, he wasn't the one that trashed the car on Friday.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
and the other thing that goes in his favour is how he handled it. I did tweet this saying, I'm sure, or did I think I sent it you in the DM, like saying, I'm sure in private he's had fits of rage,
of course,
possibly a few tears, maybe smashed a couple of things up, but outwardly, publicly, he has been a picture of professionalism. He's been calm, he's been collected, he's been, all behind the team. He could have said, no, I don't think anyone would have blamed him if, like, the team expects him to turn up at the track for the race and he's gone, get stuffed, I'm going to stay in my hotel. He would have been perfectly within his right to do that.
But he did his job.
But he didn't. He showed up. He was all smiles. He's definitely raised his stock, at least as a person.
Yeah, and I think I don't know. Yeah, I'm trying to think of an example of. So I think he seems like a nice lad anyway, doesn't he? He doesn't seem like he's any bother. He's just not particularly incredible. That's what I'm saying. He's not a bad driver. He's just not going to go down as an all-time great, bless him, unless things suddenly turn, and you never know. But what I'd like to see now. I mean, look, I'm sadistic like this. I kind of wanted Albon to bin it in FP3 and write the chassis off, but I thought that would be quite amusing.
Would have been funny.
What I'd like to see is Sargeant maybe pick up a point in Japan. Just a nice little, or not even that, just a really good performance all weekend. Good result. Maybe even beat Albon in the race. I'm not sure over one lap, but in the race, maybe finish a position ahead of him or something. Just give him a boost again and say, look, I'm still here. Don't forget about me. That would be good to see.
Takes a point off Albon on the last lap.
Oh, that'd be good.
And comes on the radio and says, not bad for a number 2 driver.
That'd be classic. I'd love that one. I would love that one. Anything else you want to add on Williams, Jonty? There's nothing to say about Sargeant, is there? Because he wasn't racing. But yeah, anything you'd like to add?
Aside from what the crash suggests, it looks a slightly better package than it has been the first 2 races.
Yeah.
It looks stable. And it looks like they understand it. Albon just made a mistake. He was pushing too hard.
I've just found at the bottom of my notes as well, worth saying. James Vowles is right. It's wholly unacceptable for a Formula One team to turn up without a spare chassis. That's not been said enough either. Williams needs to sort that. I know he made the decision in the winter they needed to use those extra weeks for testing to get the car ready and develop. I get that. It's the right decision in that regard, but that's left them on the back foot. And I think in Japan, they're only having 2 cars as well. I don't think the third chassis is going to be there till China. So that's not good enough for any
I do
team.
feel for him. But I love the way that they're being so public and open and honest about this. He's doing all these, videos that the team put out on the social media where he's just saying, flat out, this is what I'm having to work around and deal with.
Excel spreadsheets.
It's very cool to see how he's being so open about that. Although you have to think that when he first got in there, he probably spent the first day going, fucking hell, what is going on here? Like, what have I signed myself up for?
Like the gif of Abe Simpson walking into the what was it? the Maison Derriere, was it called in The Simpsons? I don't know why we're going down this road.
Yeah.
Just sort of walking like, I'm Team Brit. Oh, actually, no, never mind. I'm going to leave. I trust him. I trust James Vowles, and I do like his openness. Absolutely. So, yeah, I just thought I'd mention that at the end there so people don't think I'm jumping over it. They need a third chassis. They should have a third chassis. Hopefully they get that sorted as soon as possible. If you have any questions, please do drop them in chat. Any comments as well, we'll come to you throughout. You can do so through Super Chat if you've got a burning question you must have. Don't forget it's my birthday, send us £1. It's always helpful. I'm not being totally serious. I'm not. But, everybody did it. 273 quid. That'd be lovely. Again, not totally serious. Just messing about, really. But, yeah, please do drop a like on the stream as well. Always appreciate it. 114 likes. 273 of you are here. So please do leave a like. Don't forget to subscribe as well if you are new. But if you've got any questions or anything you want to get off your chest about Formula One or anything we've missed that you think you want us to talk about, then let us know now and we'll do 20-ish minutes because I don't want to go any more than really 2 hours. I know there's a countdown as well, isn't there? So there's 6 minutes to knock off that. But yeah, about 20 minutes and then we'll wrap it up for today. I'll pop some top shots on from XPB from Australia. There you go. For you to have a look at. These are their top shots on their website. Always worth a look over there at the end of a weekend. Some of the, and this isn't an ad, by the way. It's not sponsored. I do go through their images. It's amazing some of the shots they're able to get. I just don't think they ever have that level of photography skill. Sparking cars always look great under the lights. They really, really do. But yes, let us know your questions. The poll, by the way, do you think Williams were right to give Sargeant's car to Albon? 58% said yes. 42% said no. Not surprised by that.
That's closer than I thought it would be.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
On my screen, it says 57% said yes
now,
and 42% said no. So
I thought 60-40 split was what I was expecting. So
1% of you don't exist. YouTube
welcome
says
to YouTube.
So. Sorry.
Yeah, it'll be some. I'm trying to look in chat. Somebody can offend who won't get upset. Offend me. No. Should we expect the AusGP to be the only non-Max win this season? Says Black Emergency. No, I was having a look at the calendar there. Singapore, that's an outlier a little bit. China's a big weekend, Jonty. We've got one practice session, a sprint, and we've not been there since 2019. That's going to be chaos, absolute chaos. So that could throw Monaco, yep.
Even more than last year. There's the Astons and the first couple of weekends, the Mercedes were super good in the really low speed things. And you got McLaren good in the mid speed stuff. So Monaco, I think, is wide open. It'll be boring again, don't get me wrong. The race. Qualifying will be incredible. But yeah, there's no way that's the only non-Red Bull one this year. There just isn't.
Red Raven says, I am the 1% that fails to exist. There you go. I saw somebody ask a question. Who was the most crucial key person that Mercedes lost? Was it Vowles? ?
Ooh,
Take a pick.
it could well be, That's a really good shout.
I try to think if they've lost. Because Allison came back, didn't he? James Allison came back.
Yes. There's been so many losses. Jumping ship over the last 12 months.
Sorry about the dead air. I'm genuinely just trying to think that it could be Vowles. He's clearly doing a job at Williams, isn't he? So he's got to be up there. They've lost a lot, and maybe that's part of the issue. Maybe that is the issue. One of the big issues for Mercedes, to lose so many staff, key personnel, and that's what will do it for Red Bull as well. Eventually, people will move on to. There's a few rumours. I'm not going to get into them around Ferrari poaching some staff from Red Bull. Few of them move on. That could do it for them. Never underestimate your staff. It's so important to a Formula One team. It's an obvious statement. People do underestimate it sometimes. It's not just the driver and your team principal and your engine and Adrian Newey. There's lots of other things going on. So that's an interesting one. Mercedes' biggest loss is random anonymous employee 3,784, says Charles. Fair enough. Pascal says, Sean and Jonty, do you believe if Ferrari can keep up the developments, we could have a genuine title challenge? And if so, could Carlos become world champion? No and no for me.
We don't know. Because this goes back to the points we were making at the end of last year and during testing, that this is the first car that Vasseurs had, all control of, and it's the first full season of him having all control of the development path. So we actually don't know. We haven't got a previous to base it on. We don't know how much he's going to put into this car, when he's going to break off the development of the next car, how he's going to arrange things. He's the key person, and it's possible. It's unlikely. I'll be honest. Yeah, it's unlikely, but I think it's possible.
I can't see it this year. I can see Ferrari winning a couple more races this year, but maybe next year as the field converges a bit, maybe then you're looking at a potential title challenge. There's that picture of Liam Lawson asleep or nearly asleep. I can see that maybe next year, but I think this year, I still think Red Bull will win the title. Probably a race later now than we expected, or maybe 2 races later. I'd like it to go down to the wire. I could do with it going down to the wire, but I just think Red Bull will have too much. But then again, we saw with the brakes this weekend, things go wrong and how quickly things can turn. After the race in Saudi Arabia, everyone was talking about the season being absolutely bloody dreadful and Max is going to disappear and there's no title fight, it's not even close and there's no point in watching anymore. And suddenly, although we all still think, most of us still think, yeah, Max is going to win it, at least you look at that table and go, well, things can turn very quickly. A big lead, 25 points available at a race weekend, a big lead can evaporate, can't it? So ask Fernando Alonso about big leads evaporating. Or big gaps evaporating. Let's not get back into that one. But yeah, thank you, Handyman, for the birthday wish. And anybody else who's popped a happy birthday in the chat, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Is his name Jaunty or Jonty? Oh, Jonty. His name's actually Stefan, but he just likes the name Jonty. I don't know where the hell Stefan came from. I'm sorry. Next year is Ferrari's year, says Dell. I've been saying that every year since 2008, mate. Every year. Every next year is Ferrari's year. It'll be fun at the end of the year if Sainz beats out Leclerc. That's a good point. That's going to be an interesting conversation, isn't it, to be had, I think, after the season, Jonty. Long way to go, but if Sainz was to finish ahead of Leclerc, I think that's a Sean and Jonty midweek stream, if ever I've seen one.
I mean, that is going to cause some very interesting discussions at Maranello. I mean, what if, going back to the previous one, just imagine that Sainz actually wins the title. Can you imagine the backlash that Ferrari could have? Like, they give you your first title in 16 years and you've dumped him for someone else.
It's a good point. It's a very good point. Just putting those two questions together, like you say, it's yeah.
I mean, I was thinking, before we got to testing, as soon as the news came out that Lewis was going to Ferrari, I was thinking, what if the Merc's suddenly good again and he goes and gets it? Can you imagine the fallout from that? Although now we've seen the car, that's not going to happen.
I was going to say that's a stretch. I'd love to see. I'd like to, actually, no, forget it. I'd like to see Sainz get some bloody credit, actually. Not necessarily among fans. I think a lot of fans that I sort of see in chat, and I've spoken to you and speak to Stuart and other creators as well, that they're all very much like, we do rate Sainz, but he doesn't seem to get the love in the paddock, because Martin Brundle was saying in commentary, and this is how thrilling the race was, really, during the race, that from what he's heard, Sainz isn't in the frame for the Mercedes seat, nor is he in the frame for the Red Bull seat. Why? What? If Leclerc was delivering those results, they'd be wanting him if he was available. If I don't know, Give Me Another Driver was doing something like that, they'd all be going, maybe they should go there. But for some reason, Sainz isn't. I don't necessarily believe. Martin Brundle will have some good sources, but I don't necessarily believe that's true. I'd like to think the Mercedes at least have him on a list, and Red Bull as well. But it's kind of bonkers that he does what he does, and we're talking about possibly having to go and sit in a Sauber for a year, or maybe in an Aston Martin if Alonso leaves. I think he deserves a bit more than that. It's not.
Yeah, I mean, we've said this about Sainz for quite a few years now.
Yeah.
Especially when he had sort of through the late teens, he had a really awkward few years where he was performing for Toro Rosso and then sort of shuffled aside for someone else, and then he was like ended up on loan to Renault because he was still a Red Bull driver. He was just like, oh, but Renault can't find a seat, so can he just have that seat for a bit? And there must have been some deal done through the engines with Cyril. It's like, and he was still always performing, always giving good results. It's like, why is no one picking up on this?
Ruth says there are only rumours that Perez has re-signed with Red Bull. I think we covered that earlier. That was, I think, not debunked, but I think some people have asked some people around Red Bull, and it's not true. Well, they say it's not true. We don't know if it's true. It could have been true. And Red Raven says Horner said earlier that Sainz is in the picture. Is in the picture for Red Bull? Did he definitely say is? I'm not doubting you, Red Raven. I sometimes feel like I need to read behind the lines with anybody from Red Bull because it's never quite what you think it is. But I know he said that he was impressed with his weekend and his press releases. Let's have a look. Sainz, Red Bull. I don't know how we ended up here, by the way. I said he needs to get some credit, didn't he? That's and you know, I don't think he's a lot. I've seen people say he's overrated, which makes me laugh because I don't think that at all. I think he's so Christian Horner said it's not out of the question. Yeah, I suppose that is in consideration, isn't it? Because if it was out of the question, he'd say no. But he's worded that in a very good way. So that it's all good in silly seasons. I think he's got to be on the list for these people. He really, really has. I'd be amazed if Mercedes haven't got him on the list. But then the next question is, would he want to go Mercedes next year? Really?
Well, that's the other thing. We know that second seat at Red Bull is, you can say, cursed, unlucky, comes with caveats, whichever way you want to put it. And we know that it can be a very tough environment. He's already come out of that family, knowing what it's like and how much more strenuous and stressful it's got. Would he really want to go back to that? No matter how good the car is and what he might be able to achieve with it, would he really want to go back to that?
But even with that in mind, if your options are going back to that, Sauber or Aston Martin or nothing.
Well, yeah.
Because you'd have to assume that Red Bull is still going to be a title contender next year, whatever happens. So that's a chance to win more races, you know, and maybe, fight for a title might be a stretch, but I'd love to see him against alongside Verstappen. I've always, we will move on from this, I promise, but I've had said this before on streams. I know we've had this conversation before, Jonty. I've always seen Sainz as, not literally because they let him go, but the one that got away for Red Bull. He, for me, was always and still is the natural replacement for Daniel Ricciardo when he left for Renault. That just made sense to me. Rather than trying to rush through Gasly and Albon like they did. Which in the end has worked out all right for Gasly and Albon. Gasly's a race winner. Albon's got a pretty much permanent seat at Williams, I think, if he wants it. And Gasly can stay at Alpine as long as he can bear it. So, you know, it's not as long as they're on the grid. It's worked out all right. They're still on the grid. But I often look at the F1 field and look at how many are F1 influenced, and you think, bloody hell, they have done some good stuff for this sport, haven't they, when you think about it. But yes, something about Jos camp busting heads with Sainz camp. I mean, I can see that Jos looks pretty difficult and Sainz Senior ain't going to be bullied, says Rachel. That's a good point. Yeah, very good point.
Oh, can you imagine those arguments? Like, just imagine Sainz turning around. Yeah, what's your dad ever won?
There's that, but I could
Not
also...
a lot. Not a lot.
I could quite easily see Carlos Sainz and Max Verstappen watching their dads arguing and sort of going, Dad, you're embarrassing me, rather than getting involved. But yeah, no, that's the story for another day. Hey,
imagine
Stefan.
going back to playground stuff. My dad's better than your dad. In Sainz's case, it really is. Multiple Rally World champion, Dakar winner, just about everything.
Stefan's made it to a stream. Hello, how was your weekend in Melbourne, Stefan? I sent you a message on Discord. You'll have to let me know how it was. He went, I think, paddock access on Friday. I think he got, which I'm very jealous of.
Nice.
So yeah, fancy. Been on holiday as well, so let me know how it's all gone, mate. Be good to hear from you. But yeah, good to see you in the stream. If Perez continues on his good form, does he deserve to be axed? Says Laurie. No. If he delivers, first 2 races, like I said earlier, he did the bare minimum expected, which is to finish, second to Max Verstappen. He did what was expected of him. That's great. Difficult Sunday for various reasons. I won't go over again in Melbourne, but if he bounces back and can continue to do what he was doing in Bahrain and Saudi Arabia, then there's absolutely no reason to replace him. That's my view on that one. So, yeah. I saw a question that's disappeared. They've taken
any driver that's performing doesn't deserve to be axed. Doesn't deserve to lose their seat.
No, or deserve to find something somewhere if they can't.
Yeah,
because I mean, this is definitely one for another day. But if Sergio Perez does lose his seat, where does he go? Is that the end of it for him career wise? That'd be an interesting. We'll definitely do that another day. I won't do that today. How great would it have been to have seen Haas on the podium being interviewed by Gunther? That would have been fantastic. That would have been good. It was weird seeing him do the post-race interviews, Gunther style, quite randomly as well. I was kind of like, okay, Gunther, good to see you, but there you go. Jordan says, what do you classify as performing? That's a broad question. Oh, goodness me, Jordan. Strap in, 2 more hours to go. No, but specifically on Perez, making sure he's there to back up Verstappen as a second driver. So looking at, if Verstappen's first by a minute, then Perez needs to be sort of second, third at worst. He's got to be, that's performing as a second driver. He can't afford to be 6th and 7th when Max Verstappen's winning comfortably every weekend, for example. So that would be my performing for Checo. But it obviously depends on the driver and the team and what they expect from those drivers. But it's, yeah. Oh, yes. Freeman, thank you. I'll throw this at you, Jonty. That might be the last question, but we'll see how we go and how long this takes. I meant to ask this earlier. Thank you, Freeman, for reminding me. Red flag versus virtual safety car. It was the last lap. They put the virtual safety car out. Do you think that incident should have been red flagged regardless of what time of the race it was? You're my safety nerd.
I do, but there are many other elements to it which make it very difficult and in some ways make a VSC a better option. And it comes down to one thing for me that some people may disagree with, but if we look through how things have gone with certain incidents in qualifying sessions and things like that, Formula One drivers are the worst in the world for obeying flags. They really are. Look at the amount of times where we've got arguments in qualifying of, they didn't lift for a yellow when they did their fast lap, blah, 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 all this kind of stuff. They really are the worst. So any other series, then a red flag would be best because everyone's then suddenly crawling. They understand that this is something serious. There's obviously a very big reason. Let's crawl around. A VSC has a similar effect, but they're still going at a fair rate of knots. You've got, 40% reduction? I think the delta they have to stick to.
Something like that, yeah.
Through that corner, that's still 90 miles an hour. Whilst they're looking down at the wheel to make sure they're sticking to the delta. Every time they glance down at the wheel, they've covered another 15, 20 meters. It was a really, really awkward situation.
So the argument there is basically it's the last lap of the race. Whatever happens, they're going to have to go past the site. It's about slowing them down as quickly as possible and make sure they stick to it. So the VSC is one that they're more likely to stick to than a red flag, I guess. Because we've seen red flags, they go flying by. VSC, they know they've got to stick to a delta.
Yeah,
a penalty,
and that's what they shouldn't be doing.
Oh, yeah, I know that, yeah.
My point is, red flag doesn't have a delta. But the very existence of the red flag is something major has happened. It should be automatically set and instilled in their minds of when there's a red flag, you're getting back to the pits at barely more than the pit limiter speed because there's something major. You know what I mean? It's very much the culture around how the drivers behave. And we know that they don't slow down for double yellows hardly. We've had them arguing in the stewards room saying, "Oh yeah, I slowed down for the yellow," where the rule is slow down sufficiently to be prepared to stop. Backing off so that you're a tenth slower through a sector is not being prepared to stop.
It's a bit morbid. I'm not going to go too far into it, but I just think of some of the instances we've seen in the past that have been red flagged and due to fatalities. And imagine somebody comes flying around under red flag, not obeying any kind of speed or not so much the speed, but backing off, and how much worse things could have been. But yeah, we're not getting into that. That's goodness me. That's a depressing one. But yeah, no, I think if the red flag doesn't have a delta and the virtual safety car does, and the best way to get them slowed down quickly is the virtual safety car, then just do it. And actually, to be fair, and I know, Jonty, it's a real pet peeve of yours how long they wait to deploy safety cars these days, but that virtual safety car was out pretty much immediately. It was
virtually instant.
So to be fair to them, that was the best way to do it. So, yeah. But flags shouldn't be open interpretation. It shouldn't be a case of, I think I slowed down enough. No, you didn't. You need to slow down by this much. I agree with you on that one.
Yeah, I've seen people in the chat, and I've seen loads on social media saying red flag wouldn't have made a difference. They'd still have been going, way faster than a VSC. And yes, they probably would. It's not that specific situation race that I've got an issue with. It's the fact that, as a whole, again, this is a problem F1 has got in general. That the drivers don't obey the flags enough, and the rules aren't specific enough for what the flags mean, and they don't enforce them enough. Especially in qualifying, they go, you didn't slow for yellows, so you got a 5-place grid drop. Things like that. It's like, no, you didn't slow for the yellows, so you're out of qualifying. You start in the pit lane. End of story. With 5 penalty points. These are the things that anything to do with safety, they should be ultra strict, and they never are. That's what annoys me.
Yeah. I don't think. Yeah, we're not saying it should have been red. I just wonder what your view was. Either way on that one, but yeah, virtual safety car worked, didn't it? So, but that again, that team radio for George Russell was not nice to listen to. So, and you can understand it. Horrible position to be in. He can't see either, can he? What's coming? He doesn't know because of the angle is out.
No, exactly.
So even more terrifying.
And there was other mitigating circumstances there, like the fact that there was the huge plume of dust. Someone coming around there, even under VSC, if there'd been someone a little bit closer, he's got a big cloud of dust. He has no idea which way to go, and that can have horrendous effects. Formula 3, I think 2016, maybe 17. Driver called Peter Lee Ji Kong was basically catapulted into orbit purely because couldn't see because of a plume of dust. And yeah, 80, maybe 85, 90 is slow in F1 standards, but it's not slow when it goes slamming into the bottom of a Formula One car that's halfway across the track.
I'm just checking something because I'm intrigued. But no, a couple of people in chat making the point as well that it's the safety, yellow flags, red flags, virtual safety cars, whatever. Communication is important for the team as well. Yes, the drivers have got to slow down if they see a yellow flag. Ignore the TV. If they see a yellow flag, but also at the same time, the team need to be jumping on and make it clear they need to be backing off more quickly than they do, or more than they do, really. Because teams,
and whilst VSC is good, I don't like how it's a delta they have to stick to. I'd never like that. Because it means in some bits they're still going pretty quick.
Pit lane speed limiter?
More than quick enough to kill a marshal.
Something like a pit lane speed limiter could be.
We can have 2 speed limiters because, I mean, some people argue the pit lane would be a bit too slow. And in many cases, yeah, it could be. So have one that's just a little bit more than that.
Let's have a look at the incident again, because I've got it on record on the TV because, it was early in the morning and I was half asleep. I just want to check what we're looking at time-wise for yellow flag to vote. Oh, it's a bit longer than I thought, actually, to be fair. Obviously, there's a delay on TV.
Yeah. And when VSC came in, there was a lot of people who argued that using a limiter would be unfair because you then have people, locked to, say, 50 mile an hour going round tight, twisty bends where they're usually doing 50 miles an hour. And then you've got other people doing 50 mile an hour down the main straight. So the people in the corners would get a massive advantage. Like, yeah, if it's only on for 20 seconds. But I'd also say, at some point, tough, that's racing. It's no different to someone getting caught on the opposite side of a track when the safety car comes out and they miss out because everyone else can suddenly dive in the pits. It's racing, shit happens. You can't make it absolutely fair for everything and everyone. It's about safety. Thank you. DGA Red Raven. You really can't balance every single scenario. Sometimes things happen, get on with it. As long as it's in the safest possible way.
About 8 to 10 seconds I've timed for I did it twice, 8 to 10 seconds for the VSC to be deployed, which isn't instant, but for F1 standards and for what we see with safety cars, sometimes it is as good as, isn't it? It's not... I don't know what the procedure is, but I can't imagine it's not. You can't do it instantly because they've got to make a snap judgment and they've got to, I assume, hit a button. So there's going to be a delay anyway. But I don't think 8 to 10 seconds is ludicrous. I'm not saying anybody's saying that, by the way. And Kieran says I think people are slightly overreacting to the incident, though it looks much worse than it was. I heard the nearest car was 10 seconds away. Drivers were informed. Double waved yellows, basically. VSC as well. I agree on the accident looked worse than it was because the gravel trap scrubbed a lot of speed off and it's the wheels coming underneath that make it look worse in the position he rests in. The point is, though, what we're saying is, red flag versus virtual safety car. We all seem to be agreeing virtual safety car was the right call, but you've got a driver in the middle of the track, well in the middle of the track, blocking quite a bit of it, on his side, and then Jonty's gone on his point about virtual safety car, fairness, safety and all of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, but in that comment, you've just been and watched and timed it. It was somewhere between 8 to 10 seconds. So if the nearest car was 10 seconds away, you've got a car coming around that corner with a cloud of dust in front of them and a car sideways across the track at full racing speed.
The virtual safety car comes out just as Lance Stroll takes to the grass to go around him. So I think the point that Jonty's making, Kieran, is that you're relying on Lance Stroll obeying yellow flags, which we've seen drivers do. Do you remember, I'll give you an example, Baku, Max Verstappen's crash with the puncture back in 2021, and the stewards said nobody obeyed the yellow flags. If we give a penalty, we have to give everyone a penalty. Well, we can give everyone a penalty then.
Yeah, do it.
So
that one in Baku, that was infuriating. That was so aggravating. If everyone's ignored them, then give everyone a really, every single driver 6 penalty points. Give them a proper smack round the head with a bat saying, you behave and do as you're told. Especially at Baku when they're doing 220 down the bloody main straight.
This is such a weird conversation. I'm going to finish now, but I just want to say it's such a weird conversation because from what we've said, what you've said, John, to what I've said, what we've just watched on TV, what chat is saying, we all seem to be in agreement that the virtual safety car was the right call. But for some reason, there seems to be some kind of debate here, and I'm not quite sure why there's a debate. I think you were perfectly clear that, yes, there were double waved yellows, but you're relying on a driver following those double waved yellows, which is why the virtual safety car is... You're still relying on the drivers to follow the virtual safety car, but they seem more likely or more willing to follow a virtual safety car than double waved yellows, as we've seen so many times in the past. So I'm not really sure why the conversation's taking... I'm not going to go you, Jonty, or me, or anybody specific. Just very weird that we all seem to agree, but we're still...
Yeah, it's why it's such an awkward thing.
Yeah.
Because it does, like I say, it ultimately all comes back to being able to trust that the drivers will drive accordingly. And we can't. We demonstrably cannot. Like you mentioned Japan in the rain.
Yeah.
Race control, absolutely in the wrong. That tractor should never have been on the track until you can say with 100% certainty every single car is accounted for and under control behind the safety car or in the pit lane. That's it. No other situation should ever exist. But Gasly was driving like an absolute moron. You know, that's why race control needs to be so strict. So that these drivers for their own good. You know what I mean? Because they're just, as we've seen many times, they can be really stupid. And that nearly ended in tragedy.
I'm going to draw a line of the conversation, not because I don't want to talk about it, but I know that if me and you start on this, Jonty, we're going to be here a while. So
yeah, that final point, someone just made a great point, which I'll leave my side on.
Yeah.
No Google, not don't give you my name, go fish. There is a competitive advantage to try and ignore as much of flag impact as you can get away with. That is exactly right. And how the drivers always think.
And my final word on anything to do with this weekend is quite simply this. The Sky Sports F1 hybrid studio trackside coverage was shit. That's it. That's my final line on that. It was bloody dreadful. I say my final line. Don't get me. I will. I'll be on one. It's soulless. Delays took you out of the action. There's no atmosphere. It was awkward. I was waiting for Jamie Carragher to walk on at one point and start doing his analysis. Fucking hell. It was terrible. No Sky. And I think we've got it for Japan and China as well. So, but as soon as they can get back to normal, I understand what they're trying to do.
I loved all the graphic. Yeah. I like the graphics and stuff they were trying to do, but as you said, it had no feel. The whole point of them being there is to, as much as they can, make you feel like you're there as well.
The studio is the Monday Night Football studio, and it's a great studio. It looks fantastic, but it wasn't the same as hearing the F2 cars going around the background or whatever, testing or practicing or whatever. I don't know. You know what I'm saying? Just atmosphere. It was not good. Not good. Anyway, Jonty, we'll leave it there before I go and make another line on Sky Sports. Thank you very much, mate. We've overrun a little bit, but I think we had a good chat at the end there, a debate that wasn't really a debate because we all agreed, but it was still nice to have the conversation. And I'll just remind you again, Japan next, and it's still April. We'll be in April by that point, not October, which is weird.
And we'll all be getting up at the crack of dawn again.
And for China as well. Yay. I enjoy it. I quite like getting up early when I can drive myself out of bed. Well, thank you very much, mate, for today, and I'm sure I'll talk to you again very, very soon.
Yes, you will. See you later.
Thank you to Jonty, and thank you to everybody in chat as well for your company this evening. Sorry we overran a little bit, but quite a bit to cover today. And also, I think that conversation at the end was, I enjoyed that. It was, again, weird that it was a debate, but it wasn't a debate, was it? That's not the point. Anyway, yes, that is it for this stream then. Just a heads up, I'll make a decision on whether these continue, whether we go out to Sundays at some point. It's all going to come down to whether you guys keep watching, I guess, is the point. I don't like looking at it like that, but it is a job at the end of the day, so it needs to do well. Otherwise, there's no point doing it. But yeah, we'll see how we go. I will be back soon with another video, of course. And then it's Japan, like I say. Japan, China, and Miami are your next three. So there'll be previews and streams for all of those as well. You can follow me on social media for what it's worth. Links in the description, but F1 Word or the F1 Word, wherever you get your social media-ing. That's what I went with. That's why we're here. But as ever, thank you for watching. I've been Sean. This has been the F1 Word, and until next time, goodbye.